Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 28 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 55, Hosu Aftermath, Hospital Happenings. Izuku Midoriya was wiped. Exhausted, beat, tired, if it described a lack of proper sleep, he was at this moment. Immediately after the whole debacle with Stain and the Nomus ended, he was brought straight to the hospital with his classmates, and the process of assessing how bad their injuries were was very arduous. Tenya and Shoto were obviously much more injured than he was, but Izuku still needed a few stitches in his arm and leg. Unfortunately, because his injuries weren't too severe, he didn't get a room like his friends. So, he was forced to sleep on a chair in the waiting lounge if he wanted to stay and see how his friends made out. And so there he was, trudging his way down the hall with only 5 hours of sleep and a massive knot in his back. Well, I guess this is what entails with the life of a hero, he lamented. Though I guess the less than stellar news I received last night didn't help too much. Before he had went to sleep, Izuku was approached by Gran Torino, Mirko, and Hosu's chief of police, Kenji Saragame. Admittedly, he almost soiled himself when he saw the rather intimidating man before him, but after hearing the news, it made things a whole lot clearer as to why the chief was there. Also, the fact that Optimus was there in his holoform helped immensely as well. However, this news would have to reach Shoto and Tenya as well the next morning, so that's why he was working his way up to their shared room, and he was admittedly a little nervous as to how they'd react. Iida would probably be all for the idea, Izuku concluded in his head. But Todoroki, he might need some convincing. Taking a deep breath, Izuku reached for the door handle. Well, here goes nothing. He knocked first and was given approval to enter immediately, putting on his best smile when he saw his friends sitting up in their beds. Hey guys, did you get any sleep? Huh, no, not exactly. Tenya shook his head tiredly, both of his arms wrapped up in casts. Me neither. Shoto muttered, with only one of his arms bandaged up. Yeah, I figured. Izuku nodded, entering the room and taking a seat on the nearest chair. I only barely got any sleep. He craned his head up toward the ceiling, letting out a sigh. Thinking about that fight now, though, we did something pretty amazing. Shoto gave a nod back. Yeah, I agree. Running a hand through his hair, Izuku reflected. After everything that happened back there, it kind of feels like a miracle we're even alive. Though I guess having a pro there with us really helped our chances. Though it seems to me like Stain let us both live on purpose. Shoto concurred, glancing over toward Tenya. I'm impressed by you, though, Iida. He was actually trying to murder you, but you stood tall. That's not true. Tenya denied. I was. But before the young man could continue, the door opened again, revealing Gran Torino and Manuel on the other side. Ah, so the injured young'uns are awake. The elderly hero said as he glanced over to his own intern, his disapproving gaze making Izuku flinch. All the same, Torino shook his head, wanting to get to the point of them being here. I hope you kids are up and at 'em, 'cause you've got a visitor. Stepping around the corner and into the room, the boys were left surprised at the exceptionally tall man, mainly because his head was that of a black and white dog. He was dressed in a black suit with a Dalmatian-themed tie, keeping his hands tucked in his pockets as he looked down at them. This is Hosu's chief of police. Gran Torino introduced. Kenji Saragame. The chief. Shoto wondered out loud as he and Iida went to stand up. No, please, stay seated, woof. Kenji said in a deep baritone, taking everyone off guard. Woof. Both Tenya and Shoto thought to themselves. Clearing his throat, Kenji proceeded to greet the boys. So, you're the UA students who helped Mirko bring down the hero killer, huh? Shoto gave a curt nod to him. Yes, that's right. I had a discussion with young Midoriya last night about this subject, and I want to make certain that the two of you know this as well, Kenji began, straightening out his tie in the process. You see, Stain has some serious injuries. Severe burns and several broken bones. Right now, he's in a separate hospital under strict guard, woof. The dog man extended a hand out to the boys with a single finger raised. Here's a lesson you should have already learned. When quirks became the norm, the police force sought to maintain the status quo. They decided we wouldn't use quirks as weapons. That's where the heroes came in. They could do what we couldn't, if they were licensed, of course, woof. Lowering his head, Kenji closed his eyes. It would be impossible for the police to condone the use of deadly quirks. After all, we're here to stop such harm from being done. The only reason pros can use their powers now is because of the strict code of ethics that the early heroes chose to abide by. Opening his eyes again, Kenji regarded the boys gravely. That's why it's against the law for uncertified people to use their quirks to cause injury. Whether you were up against the hero killer or not, none of you had the authority to harm the villain. Under normal circumstances, you and your supervisors would receive harsh punishments for such gross abuse of your powers. The man's words settled amongst the group, but Shoto seemed to take issue with what he was saying right off the bat. Now wait a minute. If Iida hadn't stepped in, Native would have been murdered. And if not for Midoriya and Mirko, both of them would be dead. No one even knew the hero killer was in Hosu. He took a challenging step forward. Are you saying we should have just stood by and watched people die? Todoroki, wait. Izuku interjected. He wasn't. So by your logic, it's okay to break the law so long as it goes your way. Kenji retorted calmly, taking both Izuku and Shoto off guard. Nevertheless, Shoto wasn't about to back down from his opinion. But sir, isn't it a hero's job to save people? Kenji shut his eyes again in disappointment. This is why you're not a full-fledged hero yet. It's obvious that UA and Endeavor haven't been teaching you near enough. What a shame. And that was what put Shoto over the line. You damned mutt. His fists clenched in rage, he began making his way up to the dog man, much to the fear of his friends. Todoroki. Tenya insisted. Listen, he's right. Stop, Todoroki, please. Izuku got in the half-cold half-hot user's way, but that didn't deter him, raising his hand to shove the greenette out of his path. But Izuku caught his arm, giving Shoto a serious look. Listen, please. He isn't finished yet. He craned his head back toward Chief Saragame. Right, sir. Kenji nodded down to the boy. Yes. What I've just said is the official stance of the police department. He locked eyes with Shoto again. However, any punishment would only be necessary if your true roles in the fight went public. If it did, you'd be applauded by the citizens and undoubtedly be famous, but there'd be no way to escape being reprimanded. Thankfully, you children do have an easy out in this situation. Just then, one of Kenji's ears perked up and he craned his head back toward the door. Ah, and I believe I hear her coming right now. Before anyone knew it, a certain rabbit hero came bounding into the room, her hands placed firmly on her hips as her wild grin greeted them. Mornin', kids. Mirko saluted. How the hell are ya? Mirko. Tenya exclaimed. You're still here? Shoto questioned. Duh. Of course I am. Mirko went over to Izuku, reaching up to ruffle his hair up a little bit. I can't leave this one unsupervised, ya know. Izuku's could feel his cheeks flushing at the gesture, but still tried to shrug it off. Oh come on, I think we both know which one of us is the more responsible one. That got a laugh out of Mirko as she hooked her arm around Izuku's neck, leading him to struggle and cough for air. Ha ha ha, nice one, kid, I knew you had a sense of humor on ya. Clearing his throat, Chief Saragame brought the conversation back to the main point. While the levity is appreciated, Mirko, I believe you had something to tell these young students. A suggestion that won't get them in trouble with the law. Oh, right. Sorry there, Chiefai. Earning a grumble from Kenji, Mirko led Izuku and Shoto back over to the beds, sitting them down next to Tenya. Alright, so here's how things are right now. You three helped me beat the tar out of that hero killer, right? Pretty much. Shoto affirmed, while Tenya and Izuku nodded silently. The young man shot the police chief a brief glare. And apparently that was something we weren't supposed to do. Mirko winced and rubbed her neck. Yeah, that kinda sorta slipped my mind, too. I was so caught up in the moment that I forgot about what the consequences would be. She furrowed her brow to the three boys seriously. But yeah, the chief's right. The three of you aren't only unlicensed, but you're also minors who got put in harm's way. She directed her gaze over to Izuku. And you specifically, Deku, got put in harm's way because of me. If word got out about this, I could have my own hero license revoked. What? No. Izuku stood up defiantly. That can't happen. you're so close to entering the top 10. But Mirko shook her head at that. Kid, my reputation's the last thing I'm worried about right now, it's yours. Sure, I wouldn't be a hero anymore, but your future would also be put into deep shit. Just then, however, her smile returned as she jabbed her thumb over to Kenji. But thankfully, K-Dog and I have thought of a way to clear all of us of this mess secretly. Izuku and the others were intrigued and surprised to hear that. Whoa, really? We're just gonna lie to the public. Happens more times than ya think, kid. Mirko wagged her finger. Sometimes, it's just necessary to keep the peace. But don't worry, the story I came up with will make sure that all of you all still have a role to play, even if those roles are lessened. The trio of students eyed one another skeptically, but Shoto prompted her to go on. We're listening. Okay, so here's how I see things. Instead of Deku and myself arriving first, we'll say that Icy Hot over here got to Engine Boy first. Mirko explained, wearing a proud smile. That way, your injuries and the severe burns on Stain are explained as an act of panic and self-defense instead of intentional harm. She pointed over to Izuku. Then that's when me and Deku find you and I have him get all of you away from the problem area so that I can take Stain on myself. So in the end, you will be taking a majority of the credit. Tenya concluded with an understanding nod. It makes sense, though it would paint Todoroki and I as victims of the hero killer while Midoriya takes credit in helping us escape. Mirko pursed her lips, nodding apologetically. Yeah, sorry, but it's what would make the most sense logically. And you're sure it's the only option? Shoto questioned. Giving a shrug, Mirko's expression soured a bit. Well, it's either that, or your old man gets the credit since he's the only other person who could give Stain severe burns like that. Seeing Shoto's scowl deepen, Mirko knew that he wasn't a fan of that option at all. Yeah, see, compared to that, our little white lie sounds like the more awesome option. Personally, I know where I stand. Kenji spoke up, the dog man giving the teens a thumbs up. I don't want to damage any promising young careers, not for a mistake like this. As much as this felt like a hollow victory for Shoto, he had to admit, this presented quite the opportunity. After all, if this was a chance to screw over his old man, he wasn't about to let it slip through his fingers. Okay, sounds good to me, I guess. That's the spirit. Mirko pumped a fist into the air. Besides, having a lesser role is better than having no role at all, am I right? Back toward the door, Manuel had finally broken his silence as he began to tear up a little. Of course, either way, we'll still have to take responsibility for being negligent supervisors. Seeing his mentor silently weep, Tenya stood up and walked over to him, giving an apologetic bow. I'm sorry, Manuel, sir. I should have listened to you. Yeah, Manuel gave a light chop to the back of Tenya's head. You caused us a lot of trouble. Remember that, and don't do it again. Sir. Tenya straightened up at full attention. Shoto nodded over to the police chief as well. And I apologize, too. We'll leave things to you. Hints of a smile came to Kenji's candid features. I know it's not the fairest option. No one will know what you truly did, even if you still had parts to play in the story. He trailed off as he gave a full bow to the teenage boys. But at least allow me, the chief of police, to thank you. There was a short pause before Shoto muttered, you know, you could have led with that. Ahem, well, yes, I suppose, woof. Kenji stood up straight again, placing his hands behind his back. Well, with that, I must get going. There's still much work to be done in the aftermath of all this. And if I'm correct, you have more visitors coming soon. He turned toward the door, giving a wave to the group as Manuel and Gran Torino joined him. I wish you boys a good recovery, and once again, thank you. With that, the three men left, leaving the three boys and Mirko by themselves. Wait, what did he mean by, more visitors? Shoto asked. Izuku winced and rubbed his neck sheepishly. Yeah, about that. He approached the door and peered outside, seeing said visitors immediately. You guys can come in now. Moving out of the doorway, Izuku allowed a familiar pair of people inside, or rather, a familiar pair of holoforms, to be more accurate. Shoto's eyebrows rose up at the sight of Orion Pax entering their room, instinctively sitting straighter at attention in the presence of such authority. Coming in next to the man was Stella Armstrong as well, her eyes locked firmly onto Iida, who fidgeted uncomfortably on the bed. Both of their expressions were unreadable, no doubt because of how important their business here was. Orion peered over to Izuku, giving him a nod. Izuku, I assume things went well in your meeting with Chief Saragame. Yes, sir. Izuku confirmed, glancing over to his classmates. It took a bit of convincing, but the guys have agreed to Mirko's plan. I see. Bringing his attention over to the rabbit hero, Orion bowed his head slightly to her. Mirko, thank you. Your idea for keeping these children out of trouble with the law is much appreciated. And once again, I apologize for my bluntness last night. It's alright, Op. Mirko shrugged off. Trust me, I get it. Having to deal with those monsters and Endeavor at the same time. PFF'd, I'd be pretty peeved, too. That managed to get Pax to crack a small smile. Yes, of course. However, his expression went back to being serious as his sights settled on the two injured boys. Izuku, Mirko, if you could kindly leave us be for a little while, there's something that we'd like to discuss with these two. Izuku gave a salute. Why yes, sir, understood. But before he left, he shot a sympathetic look over to his friends. I'll see you guys later. And Iida, good luck. He received a wordless nod from the spectacled young man before he and Mirko both hurried out of the room, with Stella closing the door behind them. Orion pulled up a chair in front of the two boys and sat down in front of them, leaning down to rest his elbows on his knees as he laced his hands together. So, where do we start? His focus shifted between the duo, both of them visibly nervous for different reasons. Ultimately, though, the Prime decided where they should start. Why don't we begin with you, Shoto? Me, Mr. Pax. Shoto stammered, caught off guard. Yes, I'd say that's the easiest place to start. And feel free to call me Optimus, the Prime affirmed. We are in private, after all. In any case, I have already had this discussion with Mirko the night before. It's abundantly clear that both of you now know our secret. Shoto took a deep breath. Yeah, honestly, I'm still trying to process all of it. Understandable. Optimus said with a slight smile. After all, it isn't every day one meets an extraterrestrial race of autonomous robotic organisms. His countenance grew more serious again as he continued. However, I wish to know how comfortable you are knowing this information. I can imagine that it is quite a lot to take in, especially considering how abruptly you came to know about it. But the young man didn't seem bothered in the least. Oh, I'm fine, really. Sure, it was surprising seeing a VW Beetle come roaring out of a portal and transform into a giant robot, but in a world full of quirks, you get used to seeing strange things. For her part, Strongarm was rather impressed. You don't seem to be the kind of person who lets things bother you too much, Shoto, she said in approval. If you were a cadet for the Cybertronian police force, Prowl would probably cite you as one of his favorites. What with that calm demeanor of yours? Shoto wasn't entirely sure if that was a compliment, but he wasn't about to wave it off. Thank you. His attention went straight back to Prime, wearing a stern grimace. Anyway, you can count on me to keep your secret. But please promise me one thing. What is that? Optimus inquired. Please don't tell my father that I know about you guys, the young man implored. I know that he's aware of your existence, but if he knows that I know, then he'll never leave me alone again. Optimus tightened his lips hearing that, understanding completely. I see. Very well, I accept those terms. Listen, I know that it's a very big ask for me to make, but, wait, you said you'd do it. Shoto blinked as the Prime's answer finally registered in his brain. He hadn't expected it to be that easy. Nevertheless, Optimus extended his hand, allowing Shoto to shake it. Of course. You have my word that Endeavor shall not hear a word of this. His features became slightly more apologetic as he went on. To be completely honest with you, Shoto, on the day of the sports festival when we first met, I overheard part of your conversation with Izuku. That made Shoto gasp slightly, his eyebrows shooting up. I know, and I'm sorry for my eavesdropping. However, after hearing of your problematic history with your father, I completely understand why you wish to remain discreet. Feel free to drop by the command center whenever you'd like. You will be welcomed with open arms in a completely Endeavor-free environment. Shoto let go of an anxious breath that even he didn't know he was holding, setting a hand over his chest in relief. Thank you, Optimus. I appreciate it a lot, You don't even know. Oh, I think I have an idea. Prime said knowingly, leaning in a bit with a knowing grin. After all, one thing that I know we have in common is that we both cannot tolerate your father. Ha, glad we're on the same page then. Shoto chuckled. At his side, Tenya gave a short sigh. Well, I suppose that clenches it, the young Iida stated before smiling to his classmate. Welcome into the fold, Todoroki. I'm certain the others are going to be quite thrilled to see you joining our ranks. Ah, right. Shoto turned to Tenya, remembering that it wasn't just them who knew. You said that there were others in Class 1A and even some in 1B who knew about the Autobots, right? Who are we talking about here? However, before any explanations could be had, Strongarm interrupted. Ah, we can save that for later. Right now, there's more important things to discuss. Her sights traveled down to her partner, whose confidence was replaced by unease in an instant under her disappointed gaze. Tenya, I don't think we have to explain what we need to talk about here, do we? Swallowing hard, Tenya lowered his head in shame. No, you do not. I understand that you both must be angry with me for what I did. We are not angry, Tenya. Optimus denied, standing up in front of the blue-haired boy. Simply disappointed that you would make such a reckless decision. Screwing his eyes shut, Tenya clenched his hands inside of his casts, but because of how they were wrapped, they didn't move at all. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He shouted, his voice breaking as sobs escaped his throat. I was so consumed by anger and thoughts of revenge, that I couldn't focus on anything else. I let my hatred for Stain overcome my sense of judgment, and, I put my friends in harm's way as a result. I feel so ashamed. Tenya. Optimus set a hand on the boy's shoulder, prompting Tenya to slowly raise his head back up. I know this feeling that you have experienced. I have seen several lives lost over the course of the war, and in the ensuing battles, I have seen Autobots become obsessed with thoughts of revenge against Decepticons who took the lives of those close to them, much like yourself. His face was very somber as he recalled a specific bot. One bot in particular, who was once a respected member of the police force, was entirely consumed by revenge when his entire outpost was destroyed by a rogue agent. That agent was eventually captured, but the bot insisted that we terminate him instead of retain him, which I refused. He didn't take that well, and has been in self-imposed exile ever since. Hearing this, both Tenya and Shoto couldn't help but gawk in shock and horror. Dear God, what was this bot's name? Depth Charge. Strongarm answered solemnly. It was a shame, since he was one of my favorite commanding officers before the incident. And one of my oldest friends. Prime added. But I wasn't about to resort to doing something a Decepticon would do, and he felt betrayed by my choice. He shook his head with a sigh. Being the leader of the Autobots does not come lightly, Tenya, but know this, Depth Charge should not be an example to live by. With a shaky breath, Tenya nodded up to him. I understand, Optimus. And I'm sorry. I promise, I won't do anything like this ever again. Strongarm clenched her teeth and tightened her fists, approaching her partner before taking him up by the collar, making him gasp. You'd better not. Otherwise, I'll put you in solitary confinement myself. But her angry facade didn't keep as she saw the concern and fear in Tenya's eyes, causing her to quickly break down and let out a sob of her own as she hugged him. But I'm sorry, too. I should have been more diligent, more protective, of you when your brother was hurt. I tried to find the hero killer here in Hosu before you did, but no matter how many times I patrolled, I came up empty-handed. I'm ashamed not just as an officer of the law, but as your partner as well. I'm a complete failure. But Tenya rejected that conclusion almost immediately. That's not true. He shouted in her face. I'm the biggest disappointment here, not you. I knew that it had to be you who followed me to the city, and all the while, I cursed the fact that you did. He buried himself in Strongarm's shoulder, not wanting to look her in the eye. I rejected everyone in my pointless quest for revenge, even my own partner. I'm the one who should feel ashamed, not you. I'm so sorry. Tenya. If Strongarm could cry genuine tears, she would have in that moment. Her embrace tightened as she could feel his tears run down her holomatter body, all while rubbing soothing circles into his back. Let's make a promise right now. To be better than we were in these past couple of weeks. Better partners, better teammates, and better friends. She heard Tenya sniffle against her shoulder before feeling him nod against her. I would like that, very much. So would I. Strongarm smiled. Off to the side, both Optimus and Shoto couldn't help but smile silently at the scene, witnessing the two friends vow their solidarity to one another. However, just a few seconds later, a knock came at the door, which then opened up, revealing a woman in a white doctor's coat on the other side. "Excuse me, boys, oh." She paused, seeing Stella and Tenya in their embrace. I'm sorry, am I interrupting something? Oh, no doctor, please come in. Orion assured, standing up as Stella let go of Tenya and let him sit back down. We were just wrapping up our conversation. I take it you're here for something important, correct? I am, yes. The doctor pulled up a clipboard, flipping through the papers on it. I have the boys' test results back and I came to deliver them. In particular, her sights traveled to Tenya in particular. We need to discuss your results, Iida. They're very important. Everyone's focus went straight to Tenya, the boy frowning on concern. Oh, okay. Before she said anything, Tenya watched the doctor shut the door for privacy's sake. That's when he knew that this news likely wasn't good. Meanwhile, in a different part of the hospital, Izuku and Mirko were walking through the corridors down to the main lobby, the rabbit hero having asked to go the long way so she could talk to her protege. So, kid, I've gotta ask, she garnered the boy's attention and sent him a smirk. Think you can keep up what you pulled off last night? After all, hero work involves a lot of what we had to do in the city. A sigh passed Izuku's lips and he hung his head, wearing a sheepish smile. Well, while I'm utterly exhausted, I can honestly say that I actually feel pretty good about what I did last night. Mostly because I helped save my friend, of course. He clenched his hand into a confident fist. But in the long run, I think I can definitely see myself doing this sort of thing day to day. In fact, this is the part of the job I was looking forward to the most. Really? Mirko tilted her head. Ya certainly didn't seem too enthused about it when we left Gramps' place last night. Well, that's because I didn't think I was ready. Izuku explained, placing a hand over his chest. I felt so anxious about perfecting my shoot style that I felt I needed to perfect that first before anything. See, there's the thing. Raising a finger, Mirko gave him a wink. The best sort of practice is the kind you get while you're out in the open. And if y'all let yourself worry about every single detail, you'll just end up falling on your face. Once they were in the lobby, she spun around so that she was directly in front of him now, placing her hands on her hips expectantly. So, what did you learn from this, Stopping, Izuku thought her question over for a few seconds before giving his answers. That the best experience is the kind that happens in the moment. Mirko scratched her chin, humming ponderously. Well, yeah, there's that. Though what I was gonna say was that ass kicking can really help clear your head of distractions and really help ya just go for it. With a wincing smile, Izuku felt a drop of sweat fall from his forehead. I probably should have expected that kind of thought from you, haha, beast. Izuku's eyebrows rose up and he reached into his pocket, pulling out his cell phone. Oh, excuse me, whoa. Kid, what's wrong? His hand now shaking, Izuku held it still with his other hand so that he could clearly read his phone's screen. He had 30 unread messages from his classmates. A couple were from a few of the ones he didn't interact with much, like Tsuyu and Tokiyami, but for the most part, it was just everyone in his friend group. Momo, Ochako, Eijiro, Mina, Denki, even Keita were all apparently trying desperately to contact him from at least 6 in the morning, which was not only astonishing but a little overwhelming. This many people care about me. Izuku almost teared up right in front of his mentor, but he resolved himself to hold them back. No, don't focus on that, focus on getting word out to them. Sorry, Mirko, I've gotta make some calls. Izuku apologized with a bow. Peering down to see his phone, the rabbit woman's eyes widened at the number of messages he had, and she waved him off. Oh, no, go ahead, it's fine. It's obvious your classmates must be worried, so go do what ya gotta do. I've gotta wrap some stuff up at the station, anyways. Thank you. I'll meet up with you later. With that, Izuku jogged outside and immediately went into his contacts to call Momo, since she was the one who had sent the most recent message. Please don't be busy, Izuku prayed silently. Fortunately, not 1 second after the first ring, Momo picked up, her voice sounding frantic yet relieved. Hello. Midoriya. Why Yaoyorozu? Hi, yeah, it's me. What in the world is happening? The creation user shouted right in his ear, making him yank the phone away. I was confused when I got your location text, but I didn't understand until Edgeshot switched on the news. I almost considered convincing him to try and mount a rescue operation, for goodness sake. Izuku almost bowed again to apologize, but realized it'd be kind of pointless. I'm sorry, really, I had no plans to be in Hosu right as everything went down, but my train got derailed by Nomu as we were passing through. Hearing the explanation, Momo calmed down a little. Oh, I see. So you and your mentor weren't supposed to be there in the first place. That's right, Izuku affirmed, taking a glance around to make sure that nobody was around to listen in. But, get this, the reason why I sent out my location is because me and my mentor found the hero killer there. Well, that's obvious by now. Momo stated. It's all over the news, after all. And you found Iida and Todoroki there, too, correct? That made Izuku raise a brow. How did you? Woman's intuition. The rich girl said knowingly. That and your faces are all over the news. Out of all the things Momo could have said, Izuku was the least prepared for that. There what? MMPH. He clasped his own hand over his mouth, hoping to God that no one had heard him nearly scream his lungs out. After a quick glance around, he deemed it safe and spoke more softly into the phone. How much of us is on TV? Not much, really. You have to zoom in really close for anyone to get a clear look at you, and even then, it's just the backs of your heads. Momo's words make Izuku sigh in relief, a sentiment which she agreed with. Yes, I'm sure. You're quite lucky that Mirko happened to be in the area, otherwise you, Iida and Todoroki would have been done for. Despite himself, Izuku couldn't help the cheeky grin that formed on his lips. Hey, well, actually, funny story about Mirko. On the other end, Momo had taken note of the familiar nervous tone in Izuku's voice, which usually meant he knew more than he let on. Midoriya, is there something, wait. To Izuku, it sounded like his friend had a brief epiphany, letting out another gasp in shock and excitement. Wait, don't tell me, Midoriya, is your mentor. Yes, kind of, Izuku affirmed. My real mentor hired her to help him with training me, so technically I have 2 mentors for my internship. You do realize how insanely jealous the rest of the girls are going to be when they hear about this, right? Momo inquired, already feeling quite envious. And how they're going to beg you to introduce her to them someday. Well, that won't be a difficult request. Izuku answered, his smirk increasing a little. After all, she does know about the secret now. He swore he heard Momo's jaw hit the floor on the other end. She what? I mean, I saw that the bots were in Hosu helping in disguise, but I didn't think. Yeah, you can thank B for that. Leaning against a tree, Izuku shook his head. He basically bridged in and beat the tar out of the hero killer after we got done with him. Showed himself off to both Mirko and Todoroki. Momo let out a groan. Of course he did. Why do things like this always seem to occur with wait, did you say Todoroki, too? The brunette nodded. He's in on it, too. Just make sure that his dad doesn't find out about that. Otherwise things are gonna get really complicated, really fast. I completely understand. Momo assured. I will not speak of this within earshot of Endeavor, you have my word. Once more, Momo sighed as she continued. Still, this is a lot to take in all at once. Nomu's, the hero killer, Todoroki and Mirko of all people finding out about the secret, it's quite a lot. But I'm just glad to hear that you're safe, Midoriya. I'm sure everyone else will when they hear from you as well. Izuku couldn't help but blush a little hearing that from her. Why yeah, again, sorry for worrying you. All I really had time to send in that moment was my location. And after everything happened, I've just been caught up in police and hospital business. Momo giggled on the other end. And again, I say that's understandable. It sounds like you've been through a lot, so make sure to get plenty of rest. In fact, I'll make sure to spread the word around. We can talk to everyone about what happened later. Wow, really? Thanks, Yaoyorozu, but then, Izuku remembered something. something that didn't seem right. Thinking back to all the names he saw pop up on his phone, there was one that was very conspicuous by her absence. Hey, did you happen to get any calls from Kyoka this morning? I got one from her last night, but after the stain incident, I haven't gotten anything. That gave Momo pause, humming herself. Now that you mention it, I haven't. That is very odd that she hasn't tried to call you again. But then, just as Izuku was about to speak, something strange happened. Thunk. Leaping about 5 feet in the air, Izuku spun around as something hit the tree directly next to his head, raising his hands defensively on instinct. What he saw next, though, made him utterly confused. A fiberglass arrow with a metal tip had stuck itself into the tree, and attached to it was a rolled-up piece of paper around its shaft. Midoriya. Momo shouted from the phone. Is everything okay? Yeah, I'm good. Izuku reached up and plucked the arrow out of the wood, unfurling the piece of paper and reading its contents to himself. The woods. Come alone. Peering up from the message, Izuku saw that there was a wooded area directly behind the hospital from his vantage point, and the moment he laid eyes on it, something began shimmering from the thicket. Whoever had fired this at him was trying to get his attention. He swallowed hard and spoke as calmly as he could to Momo. Yaoyorozu, I'm gonna have to call you back. But it was obvious that wasn't going to satisfy the rich girl's curiosity. Are you sure? You're not in trouble, are you? Izuku began making his way to the woods regardless. No, I'm not. It's just, something's come up and I've gotta meet with someone about it. I'll see you back at base soon, okay? There was a moment's hesitation from Momo, but ultimately, she sighed and relented. Okay, will do. Just, be safe, okay, Midoriya. Of course. Izuku smiled briefly. Bye now. Once farewells were exchanged, Izuku hung up and proceeded into the woods, the glimmering light now gone from where he had seen it. It was still visible, though, having moved further in, as if prompting him to follow. This feels like a trap, but who'd set up one near a hospital of all places? Deciding to take the risk, Izuku followed the shining light until he was about 20 feet away from where the woods began. And then, wham! Yah! Oof! Landing flat on his face in the dirt, Izuku coughed as the air was forced out of his lungs, a sudden wave having crashed down on his back. He felt his hands pinned to the forest floor and was about to activate full cowling, but then a sudden and familiar jabbing sensation went through him from the base of his neck, paralyzing him temporarily. Og! You are not moving a muscle until we talk, celery stick. Oh no! Izuku turned his head as best he could to peer over his shoulder, and just as he thought, there she sat upon him. The very girl he had been thinking about mere moments ago, and in her hero costume, no less. Kyoka. What the, how the, when did you get here? It was then that Izuku realized, wait, you were the one who shot that arrow. A few minutes ago. The earphone jack user answered, her expression neutral while her eyes stayed focused. I had a feeling you wouldn't notice since we used a stealth craft. She stood up abruptly and used her foot to move Izuku onto his back, moving over to get the arrow. But no, I didn't fire this. Tried handling a bow the past couple days, but haven't been able to get the hang of it. She threw the arrow over into a shadowy part of the thicket. He's the one who fired it. Izuku lifted his head up just in time to see an arm reach out and grab the arrow, followed by the rest of the body it belonged to walking out of the darkness. The boy let out a gasp and his eyes widened at what he saw, a tall man with a lean, muscular build wearing an all-black bodysuit and mask, which had a silver visor that was reflective in the light. This man was also decked out in several pouches along his hips, and some even on his torso, even a couple strapped to his left thigh. On his right thigh was an Uzi and at his back was holstered a katana, no doubt just as deadly as the compound bow that he held in his hands. All in all, Izuku knew he was looking at a badass right from the get-go. OOOOMIGGG, wop. Ah. God. After receiving a smack to the back of the head, Izuku snapped back to his feet, staring at Kyoka incredulously. Kyoka, what in the world is going on? Why plan this ambush? Why the arrow? And, he pointed over to the black-clad man. Is that who I think it is? Yes, Izuku, that is Snake Eyes. Kyoka introduced, waving her hand to the silent operative. And Snake Eyes, this is Izuku Midoriya, my supposed best friend. Izuku was about to open his mouth to retort, but Kyoka cut him off. Who promised me that he would stay safe only to then jump headfirst into a fight with the freaking hero killer despite saying that. Oh, yeah, Izuku muttered. You were the one who asked the bots to send me to our location, weren't you? Yeah, glad to know ya got my care package. Kyoka knocked him on the chest. Izuku raised his hands in defense. Kyoka, please listen, oof. He was expecting another strike from the perplet, but instead, something unexpected happened. She ran into him and hugged him with all her might, locking him in place. Blinking, Izuku brought his gaze over to Snake Eyes, who simply gave a shrug. Kyoka. Do you have any idea how scared I was? Kyoka responded. How worried everyone has been. I knew you were going to save Iida, but I didn't think you'd try to actually fight the damned insane serial killer, Izuku. Hearing her voice crack and feeling her hands clench against his costume, Izuku already knew what was happening. Sensing this, he brought his arms down across her back soothingly, embracing her as she buried herself deeper into his chest. I'm sorry, Kyoka. I knew that what I took was a major risk, and I'm sorry. I couldn't just leave it at saving Iida, I had to help stop the hero killer, namely because he was too good for any one of us to take down. This made Kyoka do a double take, raising her head back up to look him in the eye. Wait, seriously. Mirko wasn't even enough to bring him down. Nope. But together with Todoroki and even Iida's help, we all managed to bring down the hero killer. Izuku bobbed his head to the side. And then Bumblebee came and finished him off for us, and then to the other side. But then Stain woke up again to kill that Nomu before he finally stopped thanks to his own quirk affecting him. I saw that. Kyoka mentioned, with Snake Eyes giving a nod. It's all over the news. Izuku blinked in confusion. What do you mean? Stain's speech. Kyoka pulled out her phone, showing him a picture of the paralyzed Stain being carted off by police. It's been played across news stations a few times. Even been uploaded to the internet, but it's being taken down everywhere. Shaking his head, Izuku affirmed, that's not surprising. Words like his can be used like dangerous rhetoric. Who knows how many people he can inspire. Yeah, but do you think it's true that he was part of the League of Villains, attack? No, I don't think so. Izuku denied. He seemed to be pretty spiteful toward their presence, actually. Especially since he killed the winged Nomu. Kyoka tucked her phone back into her pocket. Yeah, good point, but you're still not off the hook yet. She reached out and grabbed him by the collar, bringing the boy down so that he was at eye level with her. There's one, and only one thing, that I wanna know, Izuku Midoriya. And you'd better give me the correct answer. Izuku swallowed again, his throat feeling utterly dry at this point. Okay, what's that? Drawing closer, Kyoka stared deep into his emerald orbs and, with the utmost seriousness, asked, did you smack Iida upside the head like I said to? And just like that, all hint of nervousness exited Izuku's body through a single laugh. Yes I did. Ha. Kyoka laughed along with him, reaching up and ruffling his hair. Great. Just the answer I was hoping to hear. I knew you'd follow through for me, Green Bean. Well, what can I say? Izuku shrugged. When you're right, and Iida was acting not like himself, I'll say that much. He glanced off to the side as he brought his hand to his neck. Though, he may have figured that out before I smacked him. Doesn't matter. Kyoka winked. He still needed it. Speaking of Iida, though, come on, I wanna go see him. Watching her turn around toward the hospital, Izuku was taken off guard. Hold on, really? You wanna go in? His head snapped back and forth between her and Snake Eyes, pointing to the latter in confusion. What about Snake Eyes? Aren't you two out here training or something? Kyoka shook her head, however. Nah, I asked if there was any way we could make a quick trip out here just so I could make sure you all were okay. But then, her eyes widened and she spun back towards Snake Eyes, bowing to him respectfully. Though it's just occurred to me that I should probably ask if I can go inside the hospital, too. Sensei. Fortunately, Snake Eyes gave a thumbs up, nodding to the girl in approval. Alright. Thanks, Snake, I'll be back on the ship just a few minutes. With a short salute, Snake Eyes took his bow and went straight into the thicket again, no doubt retreating to where the ship was. When he was gone, though, Izuku eyed his best friend, jerking his thumb to where Snake Eyes disappeared. You do know that I wanna ask more about him after this is over, right? Hey, not surprised, Kyoka said sarcastically, the two making their way back to the hospital. But I gotta say, I was expecting more surprise from you seeing him, Izuku. Yeah, about that, Gran Torino might have filled me in about Snake Eyes a little. That caught Kyoka's attention very quick. Whoa, really? Your mentor knows my mentor? Well, not directly, Izuku clarified. They've never interacted or anything, but Gran Torino knows enough about top-secret government stuff that he's aware about Snake Eyes and the secret ninja school. He pointed over to Kyoka with a knowing smirk. Which, by the way, insanely jealous that you get to go there. How's it been there? Letting out a groan, Kyoka rotated her arm, keeping pressure on it with her opposite hand. It's grueling, I'll say that much. The people there are nice, but damn, they don't let up when it comes to teaching, she pressed a finger to her lips. That said, we should keep mum about it when we get out of the woods. Can't blab about it in public, ya know. Izuku understood clearly, motioning his lips being zipped shut. Gotcha. My lips are sealed. It didn't take long for the duo to arrive at the front of the hospital, but when they did, they were greeted by the sound of screeching tires and several shouts in the distance. Not long after, they saw a black sedan come rolling into the hospital parking lot, and it was barreling straight for the front. What the? Kyoka, move. Grasping her by the shoulders, Izuku rushed himself and Kyoka out of the way, right as the sedan came to a grinding halt. The two teenagers stared at just how quick the stop was, but then the passenger side door opened, and out came someone that neither of them was expecting. Wobbling out and placing his hands on his knees was All Might. Or rather, Toshinori Yagi. The number one hero was breathing hard after the abrupt stop, and from the sound of it, he had been thrown for a loop. Hawk, I am here, ashamedly late, Hawk. Mr. Yagi. Remembering where they were, Izuku quickly corrected himself and rushed over to his mentor, his hands reaching out to him. Hey, are you okay? Where did you even? Give me a minute, young Midoriya. Toshinori raised a finger, halting his protege. I've gotta get my bearings. Pulling himself back, the One for All user bent backwards and stretched himself out, taking a deep breath in the process. Okay, I think I'm good. All the same, he glared into the vehicle that had dropped him off. Bill, you're damn lucky you're with the government, otherwise that lead foot of yours'll get ya in trouble. The driver's side door opened next, and out came Agent Fowler, giving All Might a sympathetic grin. Sorry about that, Toshi. Didn't mean to throw ya around like that. Guess I'm just too at home flying aircraft. Seeing the teenagers, he grinned and nodded to the two. Midoriya, Jiro, been a while. Agent Fowler. Izuku smiled and bowed to the man. Yes, it has. It's good to see you. Well, it's something to see you, I'll say that much. Kyoka quipped with a shrug. Fowler raised a brow at her. HMPH, still not my biggest fan, Jiro. Kyoka pointed double finger guns at him, keeping a smirk upon her lips. Right on the money, Big F. Pinching the bridge of his nose, Fowler gave a relenting sigh. Alright, yeah, stupid of me to even ask. He shook his head to get things back on track. In any case, I'm still glad to see that the two of you are okay. When I heard from Tracker about the impromptu mission that he took the bots on, we were scrambling to get back to Autobot HQ. But by then, everything was already over. Toshinori continued, rubbing his neck guiltily. A 25-minute battle, and we were stuck in Sector 7's base for the majority of it. He lowered his head to Izuku in shame. I am so sorry, young Midoriya. If I had known that you were here when it all happened, I would have busted my way out of the base myself just to get here. The fact that you had to fight the hero killer himself, Mr. Yagi, it's fine. Izuku asserted, the name feeling foreign to Izuku even though he knew he had to use it in public. Trust me, everything went a lot better than we could have hoped, actually. Sure, we've had some injuries, but Stain was brought in, we saved Iida, and MASK helped make sure the citizens stayed safe while taking on the Nomu. He smiled and balled a fist. If anything, I think things here are in pretty good shape. All Might raised his head and took a deep breath, settling into a smile of his own. That's very reassuring to hear, young Midoriya. But I do have to ask, he peered over to Kyoka. What are you doing here, young Jiro? Shouldn't you be at your own internship with, you know who? Kyoka nudged her head toward the back of the hospital. Well, technically I still am. Snake's just letting me visit the hospital to make sure everyone's okay. He's actually in the woods back there waiting for me right now. Hey, not surprising, Fowler mused. Snake always did have a soft spot. With an understanding hum, Toshinori gave a nod to the duo. Well, alright then. If everything's fine here, then I suppose we're not needed here. Toshinori. And is that you, Bill Fowler? And just like that, the skeletal man and his rotund comrade straightened up and froze like statues, the familiar, crotchety voice sending the fear of God through both of them. Shakily, they turned their heads back, breaking out into a nervous sweat as their eyes dilated at the sight of Gran Torino storming over to them, holding his cane like it was a weapon. Gran Torino, sir. Toshinori exclaimed. Sir. Fowler saluted, though he was still trembling like a leaf. It's an honor to see you Aga, Conk. Conk. And just like that, All Might and Fowler were both squatted down on the ground, holding their heads after a pair of new lumps had been put on them via blunt force trauma by Kane. HMPH, late. Torino huffed down at his old pupil. Suppose there's a first for everything. Boy. Just like that, Izuku snapped up straight. Sir. Gran Torino was about to say more, but then he noticed the young woman standing with Izuku, her violet eyes staring back at him in confusion. Deciding to pump the brakes for her sake, Torino sighed and waved for them to go. I just got word from the big man in red upstairs. He says he wants to see you back in that room with your friends. There's been some sorta important news that you gotta hear. He nodded to Kyoka. Feel free to take her friend as well. Visiting hours are still open. Thank you, sir. I'll do that right away. Zipping behind Kyoka, he placed her hands onto her shoulders and ushered her into the hospital. Well, thanks for checking in, I'll leave you to it. Bye. Before either All Might or Fowler could protest, Izuku pushed Kyoka inside, much to the girl's surprise. Whoa, Izuku, wait, what the heck was? He's my mentor. Izuku explained quickly. He also used to be All Might's mentor, so you can imagine what that conversation's gonna be like. They're gonna talk about you behind your back, aren't they? Expeditiously. Back outside, Gran Torino scoffed with a brief smirk before grimacing to All Might and Fowler again. Ya coulda warned me about him, Toshinori, he stated, approaching the now petrified blonde man. I know it probably couldn't be helped, but thanks to him, I'm getting a pay cut and my teaching license suspended for 6 months. His tendency to jump into situations without thinking is just like yours, Toshinori. Toshinori wasted no time getting on his hands and knees to grovel. I humbly apologize, sir. It's because of my insufficient teaching. I can't believe my protege caused you so much trouble. Surprisingly to All Might, though, Gran Torino let out a calming breath. Well, I don't care about my teaching license anymore, anyways. You're the only reason I got it, after all. And that was so I could keep my promise to your predecessor, Shimura. He folded his arms over his chest. In any case, there's something more important that we need to talk about. Fowler and Toshinori were both focused on the old man now as he elaborated, that being the hero killer, and how his influence could create a cascade unlike any we've ever seen. Upstairs, meanwhile, Orion, Stella, Tenya and Shoto were all sitting silently in the boys' room, still processing the news that they had heard just a few minutes prior. Stella seemed to be kneeling against the side of Tenya's bed, almost as if she was praying for something, but Tenya himself appeared to be the farthest removed from reality, keeping his head down and isolated from the others. It wasn't until the door opened that the silence was broken, and Orion craned his head back to see exactly who they were waiting on. Izuku, and Kyoka. This caught everybody's attention very quick, including Iida, who snapped himself back up to confirm that it was indeed their punk rock classmate. Hey there, guys. Kyoka waved. Bet ya weren't expecting to see me, huh? No, we weren't. Stella muttered. Kyoka, how did you even get here? You're supposed to be at your internship on a deserted island, right? Well, let's just say there's ways to get off that island, with teacher's permission, of course. Kyoka hastily explained, her gaze shifting to the two boys on their beds. She addressed Shoto first, seeing as he was the newest to all of this. Sup, Todoroki. So, I heard you got quite the introduction to our little yellow friend, you could say that. Shoto stated with a single nod. Thanks for sending him, by the way, Jiro. The hero killer's got a few more broken bones than he already had thanks to you. But Kyoka denied the half-and-half user's claims. Nah, I just told the bots where to go. B's still the one who smashed Stain into the ground. She peered over to the other couch, frowned, seeing Tenya avoiding eye contact. Iida. No acknowledgement, which didn't surprise her. Look, I know I told Izuku to smack you upside the head, but it kinda needed to. Orion came forward and set a hand on her shoulder. Kyoka, wait, Tenya, just got his test results back. And the results are, well. I'll tell them, Optimus. Tenya finally piped up, his eyes settling on her and his best friend, who both were now visibly concerned. My left hand, might have damaged, that's permanent. A gasp elicited from the pair's throats before he went on. Both of my arms were pretty torn up. But the injury to my left arm was especially severe. There was damage to my brachial plexus, which just means, I'll have trouble moving my fingers. And my hand might have some numbness. He gave a hopeful smile. Though apparently there is a chance it could be healed with nerve transplant surgery. Kyoka had her hand over her mouth in shock. Iida, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. But Tenya shook his head. It's okay, well. Maybe you should tell them what you told Prime and I. Stella encouraged, reaching out to give Tenya's knee a reassuring squeeze. Tenya clenched his fingers softly around her hand. When I came across the hero killer, I stopped thinking rationally. The first thing I should have done was call Manuel. But I got lost in my anger. I hate him so much, but I can't deny that he spoke the truth. His expression took on a more determined countenance as he went on. That's way, until I'm able to call myself a real hero, I'll leave my left hand as it is. Are you sure? Kyoka asked. Yes, the name Ingenium must be worn by someone worthy. Iida concluded. And until I prove myself worthy, I'll just have to learn to live with a slightly gimpy left hand. Izuku couldn't help but purse his lips, feeling frustrated at himself. Iida, I could have done so much more to help you. He balled his fists at his sides. Maybe, if I had been a better friend, no. Stop it. Izuku berated himself, shooing those thoughts away. He's already accepted what happened. It'd be selfish to make this about me. So instead, Izuku did something else. Taking off his right glove, the greenette exposed the scarred hand he'd received at the sports festival, raising it toward Tenya. Iida, I feel the same way. Lifting his head, Tenya stared at Izuku in astonishment, the one for all user giving a single, resolute nod. Let's get stronger. Together. Following the idea, Tenya returned the gesture with gusto while everyone else looked on, including Shoto, whose eyes widened before darting away. I feel kind of bad. Everybody's sights went to him as Kyoka tilted her head. Why's that, Todoroki? Whenever I'm involved, someone's hand gets all messed up. Shoto expressed, lifting his own hand to gawk at it in horror. Is something wrong with me? Am I cursed? The group ogled at Todoroki incredulously for a few seconds, before the students broke out into uproarious laughter. Bahahaha. Kyoka was clutching her sides while Tenya did his best to support himself against his bed frame, with Izuku trying desperately to control himself. Even Strongarm was trying to keep a lid on herself. Todoroki, I had no idea you had a sense of humor. Izuku guffawed. It's not a joke. Shoto replied with the utmost seriousness. I'm like, the hand crusher, or something. PFFT, The hand crusher. Kyoka couldn't take it anymore, she fell to her back in hysterics, running out of breath within moments. As Shoto watched on, Optimus came up to him and pat him on the shoulder. If it's any consolation, Shoto, I not only do not believe you are this hand crusher that you believe you are, but I also cannot find the humor in your statement. Thanks, Optimus. I think. Kra Chum. Several miles away from Hosu City, the volcanic summit of Mt. Fuji towered over the Japanese landscape, leaving many locals and tourists alike to revere its supreme immensity. However, on this day, the serenity of its surrounding forests would be torn asunder by an object that fell straight from the sky, crash landing into the deep undergrowth of the woods at the base of the mountain. However, this was no ordinary space rock. No, this was space metal, decidedly taking the form of an orb-shaped pod. And, once the pod burst open, a very large, imposing figure stepped out from it. It took a couple steps out from the crater its pod had landed in, taking in every aspect of the nature that surrounded it. And, with a deep, baritone yet raspy voice, it recited. This wonderful world, teeming with grace and beauty. With its red optics taking note of a patch of flowers in front of it, the robotic being raised its foot, and stomped them into the dirt. It will be destroyed. Stepping into the light, the robot revealed himself to be quite the garish one. His helm was blue and had a flat top with silver jagged parts on the cheeks, and a long, silver head crest that curved forward. His face was bright yellow and he had gnarled teeth, a crooked nose and big, red optics completing his terrifying visage. His chest was broad and colored cyan, and oddly enough, it also had a pair of red optics, one on each pectoral. In the center of his chest was also a purple crystal, which held the Predacon symbol in its center. From his back, a pair of large, folded, blue panels stood straight up, cast over his yellow, spiked shoulders. His arms were also blue, but they were asymmetrical, too. One with a normal hand with sharp fingers, and one that was just a four-pronged claw. On these arms, he had two torpedo weapons, a magenta one on his normal forearm while a bright green one was held in his claw. His abdomen was completely silver, and he had a pair of blue hip pieces that were somewhat shaped like fish fins. His pelvic region was all yellow while his thigh armor was blue, then below a pair of silver knee pads, his shin armor was again very bright yellow. Finally, his feet were surprisingly quite flat, though he seemed well balanced enough, nonetheless. As he gazed out over his new territory, the Predacon couldn't help but recite to himself once more. This planet will fall. To Decepticon rule. So. Dust proclaim. Twitwitwitwee. Cutting himself off, the con sneered and whipped his head around and he caught sight of a large bird of prey. Naturally, he did what anyone would do in this situation, he shot his magenta torpedo at it, making it fall out of the tree. The torpedo returned to him and reattached to his arm, allowing him to finish his haiku. Sky Bite. Chapter 56, A Bite from the Sky. A Flying Shark. As they walked out of the hospital side by side, Izuku and Kyoka couldn't help but let out a few giggles after what they'd just heard. Of course, the news of Tenya's hand was disheartening, but Shoto's own thoughts on the matter helped lighten the mood significantly. Ha ha ha. Oh, God, the hand crusher. Kyoka wiped her eyes, having cried after laughing so hard. I think he's gonna fit in pretty well with the others, she mused as she smiled up to Izuku. He may not act like it, but he's as much of a goofball as the rest of us. Izuku raised a brow down at her, wearing an amused smirk. Ha, goofball. You. He shook his head. Ha, no way. You're probably the most confident, calmest and coolest person I know. Oh, you know that's not true, Izuku. Kyoka nudged him with her elbow. I'm socially awkward as hell, like you, remember? Well, maybe, but you're at least a lot cooler than me. Rolling her eyes, Kyoka sidestepped in front of Izuku, blocking his path. Okay, now you're giving me way too much credit. Ah, come on, would y'all let me give you at least one compliment? Kyoka trailed off, rubbing her neck sheepishly. Sorry. I guess I'm just not used to getting praise like that, at least not from someone other than my parents. Just then, though, she remembered something that made her gasp. Oh God, that's right. Izuku tilted his head. What's up? Clearing her throat, Kyoka explained nervously. Well, let's just say I might have promised my parents something that involves you by mistake. Seeing her friend even more confused, the perplete took a deep breath, bracing herself for the announcement. They want you over for dinner after internships are over. She clapped her hands together and lowered her head. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you earlier. And I basically got you into it by accident. Blinking in surprise, Izuku was taken aback by the news, but he wasn't as terrified as he'd thought he'd be. Okay. Kyoka's head shot up, staring at him incredulously. What do you mean, okay? I said, okay. Izuku shrugged. I mean, it was bound to happen eventually, right? But, how are you not as nervous as I am about this? Kyoko reached up and shook his shoulders. My dad is gonna try and kill you, but not really, because he couldn't hurt a fly. He's gonna act like a total doof trying to be intimidating, and you're not worried about the secondhand embarrassment. Rubbing his neck with a sheepish grin, Izuku started hesitantly, Kyoka, I did kinda just confronted the hero killer and lived to tell the tale. Once again, all he could do was shrug. Compared to that, I'm feeling a lot more confident about meeting your parents. He could tell that Kyoka didn't like that, her eye twitching in frustration directly at him. I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I could bring my mom, too. Maybe she'd make things a bit more comfortable. Kyoka pursed her lips, wanting to chew him out for his unexpected nonchalant behavior, but then she realized something. Kyoka, this was your goal, remember? Wanting him to have the confidence that asshole Bakugo took away from him for all these years. Support him. She took a calming breath and relaxed, clearing her head. You know, that might actually be a good idea. Inko's a sweetheart, and I can't imagine my dad acting out if she's there. See, it's a win-win, Izuku said with a thumbs up. Everything will be fine, I promise. I really hope so. Then, for the second time that day, Kyoko went in and gave Izuku a hug, much to his surprise. Thanks for the pep talk, Green Bean. And again, sorry for dragging you into this. And just like that, Izuku's confidence took a hit, feeling himself trembling in place a little at the sudden affection. As much as he tried to muster it back up, he couldn't prevent the blush that appeared on his cheeks, but he managed to return the hug all the same. And again, it's no problem, he stammered out. You can count on me to make sure this dinner goes smoothly. I'll hold you to that. Kyoka pulled away, remembering something else. Oh, and my mom wanted me to find out your favorite dish so that she could make it for you. Izuku's eyes lit up at that. Oh, that's so nice. It's katsudon, by the way. Why am I not surprised? Kyoka winked. I'll keep that in mind. She trailed off when she noticed All Might, Fowler and Gran Torino coming over to them, the trio walking up from behind Izuku. Oh boy, I think you've got some business to take care of, Izuku. MHA. Spinning around, Izuku was met with his two mentors and Agent Fowler, leading him to stand up straight. Oh, hi everybody. How'd your conversation go? Toshinori cleared his throat awkwardly. It went fine, young Midoriya. But now, we need to talk with you. His gaze traveled over to Kyoka with an apologetic bow of the head. Alone. Sorry, young Jiro. Oh, that's fine, I totally get it. Kyoka assured with a wave. Bunch of mentor-protege stuff going on, I'm guessing. It's okay, I've gotta get back to Snake Eyes anyway. Hearing that, Gran Torino perked up, giving the young lady a grin. So you're the friend that the kid mentioned was interning with Snake Eyes, Guess that makes sense. He gave her a thumbs up. Don't worry, from what I hear of the man, you're in good hands with him. Kyoka nodded back down to him. Oh, don't worry, I know that by now. She made a point to narrow her eyes at Fowler. Better late than never, that is. Oh, for the love of, I told you that you shoulda come to me in the first place. Fowler cut himself off before he could go into a full tirade, raising his hands to back himself off of the conversation. No, don't take the bait, Bill. She's just trying to get under your skin. With a cheeky grin, Kyoka snickered, yeah, I am. And it worked. That earned a grumble from Fowler before she went back to Izuku, giving him a light smack to the shoulder. Anyway, I've gotta get back to my internship. Izuku raised a fist with a small grin. Of course, I understand. Tell me about it when we get back to school. The perplet winced a little as she gave him a fist bump. Might have to wait, till we're back at base. Secret hero team and all that, ya know. All the same, though, she gave him one last wink as she turned to leave. But don't worry, I'll fill all you guys in, for sure. Between the two of us, we'll have a whole damn lot to share. No doubt about it. Izuku affirmed with one last wave. Bye, Kyoka. Have a safe ride back. And with that, Kyoka went back toward the woods, leaving the four men to themselves. Phew, okay, so what did you guys wanna talk about? But when Izuku went back to the three older men, he was met by their smirking faces, making him fidget uncomfortably. What? Gran Torino shook his head with a slight chuckle. Haha, young love. He rubbed his finger underneath his nose as he began reminiscing. Takes me back. What? Izuku broke out into a massive blush and began whipping his arms around, frantically shouting, and not so loud. She might hear you. But Toshinori deadpanned at that. Kid, she can hear pretty much anything. Why are you panicking about this? At that, Izuku stopped and brought his arms down, gulping down his anxiety and collecting himself. Sorry. I guess that was a bit over the top. Well, at least you aren't denying your feelings for her. Fowler pointed out with a knowing grin. So hey, progress, am I right? Izuku's shoulders sagged and he let out a massive sigh, which Fowler got a laugh out of. Kid, chin up. Trust me, I've been there, and I know it ain't easy. He gave Izuku a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Just be honest with yourself and her and you'll be fine. Easier said than done, Izuku bemoaned, throwing his head back toward the sky. Especially with the kind of secrets I have to keep. All Might pursed his lips at this, stepping forward to set his own hand on his protege's shoulder. Young Midoriya, have you considered bringing young Jiro into the fold? This question brought Izuku's attention straight to his mentor, prompting Toshinori to continue. Because I must warn you, once she knows, there's no going back. She's liable to be a target to any enemy you make, or any previous enemies that might crop up. For once, Toshinori's got a point, Sonny. Torino affirmed with a serious gaze. Love is one thing, but letting others know the secret of one for all, that's a risk you need to be willing to take. He craned his neck down slightly. After all, not everyone who knows isn't as lucky as yours truly. Many villains who know are very unforgiving about it, including one in particular. When Gran Torino said that, Izuku could see both Fowler and All Might's demeanor change, their grave expressions matching one another. What does he mean by that, All Might? He whispered. It's time, young Midoriya. Toshinori replied, right as Optimus Prime pulled up in his vehicle mode. The time has come that I tell you the full story behind One for All. But to do it, we'll need to go to a more secluded location. He craned his head back toward the Autobot leader. Prime. Understood. Optimus Holoform nodded down from the driver's seat, opening his passenger side door to let them in. Climb aboard. There is an abandoned factory nearby that we can use as a meeting spot. Meeting spot. Gran Torino piped up as Fowler and Izuku both stepped into the cab. What d'ya mean, meeting spot? He waved his cane at his old pupil. Toshinori, I want answers. All Might froze up and raised his hands defensively. And you'll get them, Gran Torino, sir. I promise. But we need to go to the meeting spot so that I can explain properly. Trust me, you'll be filled in on everything. After a moment's hesitation, Gran Torino let out a grumble and proceeded to make his way into the cab as well, leaving Toshinori to sigh in relief. This is going to be a very long conversation. Back in the woods, meanwhile, Kyoka had managed to find the invisible craft that she and Snake Eyes had arrived in, following the sound that the cloaking device was making. It was very subtle, almost inaudible by the human ear. But her jacks were able to hone in on it without much difficulty, leading her to knock on the side of the craft so she could be let in. Within moments, the back hatch opened and she stepped on, seeing Snake Eyes in the captain's chair upon entry. Hey! She greeted. Snake Eyes sent her a salute before extending his hand, which she understood immediately. How'd it go? Pretty well, actually. The guys are all alive, so there's that. The mute ninja followed up with a curt nod, though he then gestured for her to go on. I had a short conversation with Izuku before I left, but that's pretty much, Much to her surprise, Snake Eyes was giving her 2 thumbs up, along with an eager nod. Wait, you wanna know more about him? He responded by pointing at her, leading Kyoka to point at herself. And me? Oh god, don't tell me you're. Ring ring asterisk ring ring. The duo's attention was brought to the ship's console, leading Kyoka to give a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. Saved by the phone, she reached out and pressed the blinking button, answering the communicator. Hello. Kyoka. Came Jinx's voice from the other end. Good, you're back. I was honestly expecting you to take a bit longer. Hey, Jinx. Kyoko replied. Yeah, I didn't want to take too awful long. Izuku and the boys need time to rest after everything they've been through. I can imagine. Jinx agreed, only to take on a slyer tone with what she said next. So, how is your boyfriend doing? Kyoko's jaw fell to the floor as Snake Eyes put a hand over his mask, almost as if he was holding back a laugh that would never come out. But that didn't last very long as the earphone jack user slammed her hands on the console and yelled, "He is not my boyfriend." Gah, I swear to God, you people are reading way too much into it. But Jinx didn't let up, laughing a little at the outburst. HMHM, are we, though? I didn't want to mention anything, but you screaming his name after seeing him on TV kind of tipped us off. That made the perplet wince, realizing her own error. Gah, damn it all. I've gotta keep those emotions in check. Taking a steadying breath, Kyoko calmed herself to the best of her ability and got the conversation back on track. See, can we not talk about this right now? We were just about to leave. Hey, wait a minute. She leaned in closer to the speaker. How the heck were you planning to talk with Snake Eyes if I wasn't here? Text to speech, of course. Jinx answered, with Snake Eyes giving a single nod. It's the most predictable way, sure, but it's the easiest. Kyoko facepalmed. Right, what was I thinking? Well, anyway, we'll see you soon, Jinx. Indeed, you will. And when you get back, you'll be just in time to meet some very special guests. That made Kyoko to a double take, snapping her head toward Snake Eyes in confusion. The only thing he did was put a finger to where his lips were under his mask, indicating that he wasn't about to divulge anything. What kind of special guests are they? Jinx answered with confidence, ones who are very eager to meet you. Though I suggest you be on your best behavior with them, okay. We'll see you soon. Jinx, out. With that, the call ended, leaving Kyoko with more questions than she had answers. You people really like to keep secretive, don't ya? Glancing over to Snake Eyes, she saw him give another nod, tapping his chest for emphasis. Yeah, I get it. Keeping things close to the chest comes with the territory. But I think we've all had enough of secrets, don't you? But Snake Eyes shook his head, flexing his hands out and waving them around with a certain flair about him. Are you saying it's a surprise? Giving another thumbs up, Snake Eyes confirmed her statement. Well, not exactly a big fan of those either, but I'll humor you. To that, Snake Eyes started the ship, its engine kicking on though keeping surprisingly quiet as it rose into the air. Once it was above the treetops, it quickly dashed off toward the north, flying at high speeds through the sky over Hosu City. The ride was mostly silent for a little while until Kyoko spotted Mt. Fuji below them, prompting her to marvel at the sight. Whoa, you never really get a sense of scale for something until you see it from above. Snake Eyes was about to respond, but then something caught his eye on the radar. Something was approaching from behind them and fast. He snapped his arm over and firmly pushed down on Kyoko's shoulder, making her sit down. What the, boom, ag. Whatever had appeared on the radar, it had struck the ship from behind, making several alarms start blaring as the cockpit lit up with red, flashing lights. On top of that, a warning screen came up, showing that one of the engines had been destroyed. Warning, the computer announced. Engine failure detected. Ship descending rapidly. Evacuation recommended. Evacuation. Kyoko screamed as Snake Eyes slammed his hand on a large, red button. How do we do GGH? Screaming again, Kyoko felt her stomach get left behind as her seat was suddenly ejected from the top of the ship, shooting straight up through the top. Snake Eyes wasn't far behind as the duo went falling down just as abruptly as they flew up, though thankfully several parachutes came bursting out the back of their chairs as they descended. As they were gently brought down to the ground, however, they both stared on in stunned silence as their ship went plummeting toward the base of Mt. Fuji, exploding in a brilliant blast of flame. Well, at least we didn't have anything important on there. She called out to her mentor, which he nodded at. Before long, both of them had made landfall, and they unhooked themselves from their seats immediately. After feeling herself over, Kyoko quickly deduced, okay, no broken bones. Once again, Snake Eyes shook his head, giving her a salute. But then, his head shot up toward the sky, which made Kyoka do the same. There, they saw something fast and noticeably bright green go rocketing through the air. It seemed to be some sort of missile or torpedo, and it was flying straight over the forest where they had landed. That was not a normal projectile, Kyoka concluded, looking to Snake Eyes for further instruction. What do we do? Observing the torpedo flying off, Snake Eyes motioned for Kyoka to follow him, though he also put his finger up to his mask again. This time, though, Kyoka knew it had a different meaning: keep quiet. The punk rocker understood completely and pressed her lips together firmly, keeping as silent as she could while hastily following her mentor through the foliage. Wish we'd gotten around to stealth lessons before this. Thankfully, the torpedo hadn't diverted from its course as they tailed it, only doing so as it came in for a landing in a small clearing. The duo managed to make it just in time, though, as the projectile transformed. Its outer shell suddenly split cleanly down the middle, extending out on a set of gold armatures to become a pair of jet-propelled wings. And, on the inside, was the body of a small, draconic-like creature, with most of it the same lime green as its wings. There were gold details throughout, mainly on its small legs, its teeth and the horns at the back of its head, with some bits of magenta on its face, body and tail that unfurled out of its rear. Hiding behind a pair of large trees, Kyoka held back a gasp as she saw the Decepticon symbol on its chest. I knew it. A Decepticon mini-con. Letting out a shriek, the dragon-like mini-con landing on a sturdy branch, as if waiting for something. But the moment it roared, something came bursting out from the ground, taking Kyoka and Snake Eyes aback. As it happened, it was yet another mini-con, though this one was much different. Its main color was purple and it had a short body with some green detailing along its back, along with 6 green, bug-like legs. Its tail was long and curved, propped up above its head with a massive stinger. At the front of its body was a small head with a pair of red, segmented optics and a mouth full of silver, mandible-like teeth. Finally, on each side, it had a set of powerful pincers that snapped quickly as it emerged. There was no doubt about it, this mini-con was a scorpion, and on its back, the Decepticon symbol was emblazoned as well. God, I hate today. Kyoka muttered to herself, only for the ground to start trembling every few seconds. It was a feeling she was all too familiar with, though, and the fact that she heard mechanical whirring getting louder and louder only affirmed her thoughts. Damn it, footsteps. Sliding down the back of the tree, Kyoka motioned for Snake Eyes to do that same. Lay low, she whispered. Snake Eyes obliged without question and stayed low to the forest floor, with both of them keeping an eye out in the clearing for whatever was coming. Kyoka's lips parted in astonishment as, just past the tree line, a large, dark figure came skulking forward, its features obscured partially by shadow. Its only defining feature were the blood-red optics that shined through the dark, both on its head and on its chest. With a dark chuckle, the Decepticon gave the green dragon praise. HM, excellent work, Dragoness, he said as he pat the mini-con on the head. We can't have any pesky organics intruding on our hard work, now can we? The mini-con, Dragoness, let out a content growl at the affection, only for the scorpion bot to start chittering and waving its claws around to get Skybite's attention. Reekikikik. Reekikikik. What's that, Sandsting? The con questioned, to which the mini-con pointed off toward the west with its stinger tail. More organics, you say? In that direction, I see. He nodded down to Sandsting affirmably. Yes, I agree. They should be terminated as well. We cannot risk any of these fleshlings locating our quarry before we do. He craned his head up to the Dragoness. Both of you, pursue the little nuisances while I continue the search. Regroup with me once they've been disposed of. With a dutiful nod, Dragoness leapt off the branch and flew into the air, compressing into his torpedo mode within seconds. Following suit, Sandsting brought his claws and stinger together to transform into his torpedo mode, taking to the skies after his comrade. Kyoka and Snake Eyes stared after the Decepticon as he trudged back into the forest, leading the former to whisper, "We need to get to whoever they found before they do and get them out of here." Snake Eyes agreed without hesitation, motioning for Kyoka to follow him. With surprising speed, the ninja darted off straight into the woods, with Kyoka mimicking his running form to try and keep up. It wasn't easy, especially since she wasn't as graceful as he was about dodging foliage and her footsteps weren't as silent, but she managed to keep up. They kept their eyes skyward, following the exhaust trails that Dragoness and Stansting left behind, until eventually. I.e., a high-pitched scream alerted the duo, making it very clear that there was someone up ahead. "Oh crap, pour on the speed," Kyoka shouted, prompting Snake Eyes and her to go into a full sprint. Thankfully, they caught sight of a struggle going on just through the trees, and they made it just in time to see something that neither of them were expecting. "Get away from my protege, Decepticon scum." With a flying kick straight over their heads, the arriving pair were astonished to see Edgeshot slamming directly into Sandsting, forcing the Mini-Con to transform and land on the ground below. "Sir, with all due respect, I know how to handle a situation like this." The sound of a familiar voice made Kyoka's head snap around, her eyes widening when she saw Momo on the forest path. The creation user had just used her quirk to create a large cannon, which she shot at Dragoness immediately. Unfortunately, the blast missed, and Dragoness transformed to start breathing fire down at her. With a gasp, Momo unzipped her top and created an oversized shield, protecting herself from the flames. Momo! Kyoka exclaimed. A gasp escaped Momo's throat and she spun around, staring in disbelief at the sight of her best friend in front her. "Kyoka, what in the world are you doing here?" "That's what I should be asking you." "Ah, duck." Reaching out, Kyoka brought Momo's head down just in time to avoid a dive-bombing Dragoness, the Mini-Con roaring angrily at both of them. "Ah, but we can talk later. Momo, there's a con in these woods searching for something. I don't know what, but he had these little pests shoot our ship down earlier." Momo brought her hand to her lips in shock. "Oh my gosh, so that's what we saw fall out of the sky." She called out to her mentor, "Edgeshot, sir. Things have gotten more complicated." The ninja hero was darting his way through the trees using his quirk, becoming so thin that every shot that Sandsting fired from his stinger missed. "I can see that. We need to regroup immediate, gah." Unfortunately, Edgeshot had spread himself too thin, which gave Sandsting the perfect opportunity to transform, rocket up, and then change back into scorpion mode to snap his pincers on Edgeshot's razor-thin body, bringing him down to the ground. "No!" Momo cried out, rushing to her feet to help her mentor. "Edgeshot, hang on, ah. Get down." Kyoka tackled Momo down just as Dragoness flew at them again, avoiding the Dragon Mini-Con's assault. Compressing himself back to his normal shape, Edgeshot attempted to free his leg from Sandsting's pincers, but the Decepticon simply hissed and kept applying pressure. Edgeshot was about to use his quirk again to cut through the Scorpion Bot's claw, but someone beat him to it. Rushing forth into battle, Snake Eyes leapt up over Edgeshot and stabbed his sword directly into Sandsting's pincer, making the Mini-Con cry out in pain and back off immediately. As they're burrowed into the dirt, Edgeshot breathed a sigh of relief, only to crane his head up to see Snake Eyes offering him a hand. "Ha, you were always one to make a dynamic entrance, brother." Edgeshot breathily laughed as he took Snake Eyes' hand, standing with a smile beneath his mask. Needless to say, both Kyoka and Momo were shocked. "Brother," they echoed. But Kyoka was snapped out of her stunned state when Snake Eyes snapped his fingers, the ninja then pointing down to where his ears were and then down to wrists. The perplexed eyebrows rose in realization. "Wait, are you giving me permission to use my quirk?" Snake Eyes gave a thumbs up, which made Kyoka smirk intently. "Oh, I'm gonna enjoy this." Plugging her earphone jacks into her wrist-mounted speakers, Kyoka rolled onto her back just as Dragoness came diving down at them again. "Hey, Puff the Magic Dragon. Get a load of these tunes." Thrusting her arms up, Kyoka let loose a massive sonic blast, which not only propelled Dragoness back upward, but also made him cry out in agony. His audio receptors were in so much pain that he was forced to transform back into torpedo mode, blasting off in the opposite direction. Shooting up from underground, Sandsting followed immediately after. With a sigh of relief, Kyoka sat up and pumped her fists high in victory. "Woohoo! Those minis ain't taking us down." She jumped to her feet and then helped Momo stand up, the duo smiling at one another. "Now what in the hell are you doing here, Yao Momo?" "Huh, well, Edgeshot and I were doing some stealth training in the forest," Momo explained, her eyes trailing over to her mentor as he and Snake Eyes came over. "But as you can imagine, things didn't go as planned. When we saw your craft get blown out of the sky, we thought someone was making explosions out here with their quirk since it came out of nowhere, so we followed the source. And then, yeah, Decepticon Central. Kyoka shoved her hands into her pockets, furrowing her brow at the situation. Those little pests somehow detected our ship even though it was cloaked. Not sure how, but I'm betting that their master has something to do with it. A safe guess, to be sure. Edgeshot concurred, sharing a glance with his brother. So, I see that you've finally managed to recruit someone from UA, brother. I hope you know the risk you're taking when it comes to this. He received a nod from Snake Eyes, who gave a so-so hand gesture. Kyoka clarified further for him. It was a bit of a rocky start with a lot of misunderstandings. But by the time things got cleared up, things were a lot better. She sent a smile over to Snake Eyes, raising a hand to him. And now, G.I. Joe know about the Transformers, at least I assume Fowler's told them everything by now. Well, I suppose that was only a matter of time. Edgeshot shrugged. After all, government secrets can't be kept from other government secrets for long. Momo narrowed her eyes at her mentor suspiciously, placing her hands on her hips. Speaking of secrets, what exactly did you mean when you called Snake Eyes, brother, before, Edgeshot, sir? Mind filling us in a little? Kyoka did the same face at Snake Eyes, leaving both men somewhat sheepish. Yeah, I don't think I heard Jinx mention anything about you having family, Snake. Ahem, well, that's because we are not technically family. Edgeshot clarified, all while Snake Eyes pointed to the Arashikage symbol on his shoulder. Exactly. When it comes to Snake Eyes and I, pulling up his sleeve, Edgeshot revealed the same, red, 6-line symbol on his arm, which matched Snake Eyes perfectly. Our past is something that we cannot forget. Whoa, you two were part of the same ninja clan. Kyoka and Momo both beamed in awe. That's so cool. Yes, very cool. Momo concurred. Though I have to ask, Edgeshot, sir. If you were once part of a ninja clan, then how did you become a hero? But Edgeshot raised a hand, flicking his sleeve back into place. Questions that can be answered after we get out of this situation. He directed his attention back to Snake Eyes. Our own vessel isn't far from here, but I feel it's more imperative that we try and contact the Autobots first. Optimus must know of this. Snake Eyes was all too quick to agree, gesturing to his brother to take the lead. Right, we should start moving. He glanced back to the students again. Girls, be sure to stay with us. We cannot be sure how fast this Decepticon is, so we need to keep up the pace. Both girls nodded at him without question. Yes, sir, they echoed. Excellent. And remember, a good ninja always sticks to the shadows, no matter how broad of daylight it is. Edgeshot and Snake Eyes directed their gaze towards the darkest part of the woods, pointing it out to the girls. Now, let's move. Following their lead, the girls leapt into the deep foliage after their mentors, sticking closely behind. Back further in the woods, though, the Decepticon torpedo mini-cons both came into a harsh descent when they finally found their master, to the point where they crash-landed right beside him. Ah, what? Skybite whirled around to see Dragonus and Sandsting both damaged, the former's audio receptors sparking a little while the latter kept his injured claw close to his body. Instead of being concerned, however, Skybite glared down at the two of them. What happened? Sandsting hissed and chattered out a reply, which the Predacon simply sneered at. What? Armed and dangerous. He pointed directly at their wounds. These tiny things did this to you. The mini-cons nodded hesitantly up to Skybite, leading him to dramatically facepalm. Words cannot describe how disappointed I am. Very well, I shall do it myself. Come, now. With his firm order, both of his followers transformed and attached onto his back, only for him to transform, and then dive down underground. From there, a massive, jagged fin came bursting out and surged forward as Skybite began swimming through the rock and dirt. If you want something done right, you do it yourself. As all of that was happening, though, Optimus had just arrived at the abandoned factory in Hosu that All Might had mentioned, entering the spacious building and pulling to a stop. From there, he opened his doors and allowed everybody to disembark. Once Toshinori, Izuku, Fowler and Gran Torino were all out and settled, Orion leaned his head out and gave the number 1 hero a nod. Alright, my friend. I'm ready when you are. Right. Let me just close the garage door. Sucking in sharp breath of air, All Might buffed up into his muscle form and firmly pulled the large door shut, only to immediately let that breath go and poof back into his skinny self a second later. Ha, there. Now no one should see us here. He walked back over and was immediately met with Gran Torino's curious scowl, the old man raising a brow up at him. Okay, it's time for some explanations. Darn right. Torino waved his cane. Just what is going on here, Toshinori? Ha, Gran Torino. You've done so much to help both me and young Midoriya with One for All. Toshinori began, bowing his head to his old teacher. And for that, I couldn't be more grateful, especially in lieu of my first master's death. So, with that in mind, it's time that we let you in on another big secret that we've recently taken the burden of keeping from the world. That includes myself, the top 10 heroes of Japan, young Midoriya, the UA staff and a handful of students, and of course, Sector 7. The old hero tilted his head, his curiosity growing. Go on. All Might took that as the go-ahead, giving a nod to Optimus. It's time, my friend. Show him what you're truly made of. His words made Torino snap his eyes over to Prime, who unhooked his trailer and drove forward. Gran Torino, the man who trained All Might himself, allow me to properly introduce myself. With that, Orion suddenly flickered out of existence, eliciting a gasp from Gran Torino. You see, I am no man. Rather, I am much more than meets the eye. *WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT. In mere seconds, Gran Torino's frustration was replaced with complete awe and amazement as Optimus Prime transformed before him, the Autobot commander standing tall as he peered down at the small human. But then, Prime came down and crouched to one knee, lowering his head so that he and Torino could see one another. Even still, Torino himself was stunned. What in the world? Gran Torino, sir. Izuku piped up, wearing a smile as he stood next to his mentor. Allow me to introduce you to a good friend and teacher of mine. He craned his head up to the Autobot. Optimus Prime. It is a true pleasure, Gran Torino. Optimus greeted with a bow of his head. I have heard much about you from All Might, and from what I've observed, your reputation is not unfounded. Ga. Torino threw his head back, trying to collect his thoughts before he threw himself back and thrust a finger up to Optimus. What in the heck are ya? Some sorta giant walking, talking, government experiment. The Prime wasn't fazed by the outburst, but clarified all the same. Haha, no, not at all. I am an autonomous robotic organism from the planet Cybertron, also known as an Autobot. Blinking twice in shock, Torino uttered, an alien. I'm talking to a giant alien robot. He raised his cane with an uncertain look. Am I dreamin'? I should probably check. Why you're not dreamin', Gran Torino, sir. Fowler insisted, grabbing the head of the cane before Torino could start hitting himself. Trust me, this is very real. He set his sights up to Optimus, confidently telling the old-timer. Optimus Prime and his Autobots have been hiding out on Earth for some time now, and they've been quite the help to us in that time. There's more of you, Gran Torino exclaimed, now fuming as he waved his cane up at Prime. Just what in the hell is going on here? With a brief chuckle, Optimus obliged. I would be happy to explain everything, and from there, that's exactly what he did. It took about 20 minutes to cover everything, but by the end, Gran Torino was much calmer, having time to digest all of the information that Optimus was expositing to him. Eventually, though, Optimus came to the conclusion, and that brings us to today, or rather yesterday as we assisted in the battle with the Nomu with MASK leader Matt Tracker at the helm. And now, here we are. Well, that's quite the tale, Optimus Prime. Torino nodded, hopping off the box he had seated himself on during the recounting. I have to admit, in all of my years of fighting criminals and being a hero, I never once thought I'd meet an actual alien. But I suppose there's a first for everything. And as for you, he glanced over to Toshinori, Fowler and Izuku, the three of them freezing up a little. But then, he gave them a short grin. Thanks for letting me in on the secret. I appreciate the trust that you put in me and I swear, I won't breathe a word of this to anyone. With a deep sigh, Fowler placed a hand to his chest in relief. Phew. Well, I'm glad to hear that, sir. Toshinori agreed as well. Yes, thank you, sir. I'm glad that this secret is in safe hands. Hey, well, it's in a ton of safe hands, then. Torino said with a scoff. Considering how many people know about it. He placed his hands on his hips with a questioning gaze up to Optimus. I mean, really, you people gotta keep a tighter lid on this and stop being accidentally discovered. Hell, I'm surprised these mech people you mentioned haven't come out and said anything. Optimus wasn't about to argue that. As am I, though I suspect that's because they would not want to risk their own secrecy. Intelligent alien robots living amongst humans in disguise would be quite the news, but the longer we can prevent that from happening, the better. For sure, Izuku said. Hopefully Todoroki and Mirko finding out will be the last incident we'll have for a while, at least. Torino huffed and turned fully to the young man, stamping his cane on the ground. HMPH, right. But now, it's time for some other important business. Izuku tilted his head, prompting Gran Torino to go on. Kid, there are several things about One for All that you haven't been made aware of yet, and that's exactly what we're here to do, right, Toshinori? Izuku was taken aback, whipping his head up to his mentor. Wait, what? All Might, you were keeping something about One for All from me. And not without good reason, young Midoriya. Toshinori insisted, raising a reassuring hand. Believe me, I intended on telling you this from the very start, but I wanted to make sure that you were ready to hear it. He wore a grim expression as he clenched his hand into a fist. After all, you already know how much of a burden One for All is to bear, but with that burden comes many other things as well, including those who'll wish to bring you down. Steeling himself, Izuku asked, you mean like, enemies? The number one hero gave a grave nod. Yes, I've made many over the years, but one in particular needs to be talked about. And, after watching how amazingly you've progressed with One for All over these past several months, I think now, you're ready, though you might want to take a seat for this. Finding a bunch of old steel crates, the four men all sat down, with Optimus using an old, rusty truck for his seat. Once they were all settled, Toshinori rested his arms on his knees, leaning toward Izuku with intent behind his gaze. Now, the quirk you have is unique, and you know that. But in order to understand the enemy I'm about to speak of, you must first know One for All's origin. You see, it was actually derived from another odd quirk, a power that's very old. It used to be something different, Izuku said incredulously. Yes, and the name of that quirk is, All for One. Almost all at once, All Might, Fowler and Gran Torino's features darkened, giving Izuku a feeling of foreboding. It allowed its user to take quirks from others. And the user could keep the quirks for himself or give them to someone else. That made Izuku lean in, astounded by the very idea. What? You mean, this quirk could steal powers? Exactly. Gran Torino confirmed, both hands planted firmly on his cane. This was back when quirks were just starting to show up. Before society had figured out how to deal with the people who had the fancy new powers. When quirks first appeared, suddenly it was hard to say what it meant to be a normal person anymore. Toshinori continued. Laws and human rights were hotly debated. Civilization's progress stalled, and society itself decayed. Izuku peered up toward the closest window, staring into the sky. If superpowers had never appeared, then humans would be taking interstellar holidays by this point. His attention went back to the three older men. I remember hearing that from someone famous on TV. That would be one Isaac Sumdac, if I recall. Fowler verified. And he makes a good point. Science and technology stalled along with civilization, at least in certain terms. He craned his head back to All Might. Though that's not exactly what we're here to talk about. With another nod, All Might went on again. Right. You see, during that chaotic period of change, there was one person who managed to rally many people together. He went by the name of his power, All for One. He stole quirks from others, and then, with his overwhelming abilities, he spread his influence all across the country. He manipulated people to serve his purposes, and committed evil acts with little resistance. In the blink of an eye, he became the leader of villains, and ruled over Japan. Optimus folded his arms over his chest, reminded of a certain other tyrant who had overtaken Cybertron over the course of millennia. He sounds concerningly similar to Megatron, and I cannot decide whether they would be allies or enemies in that regard. Izuku was visibly shaken by this point, though, remembering several murmurings he had heard in the past. I've seen plenty of rumors about this online, sure, but isn't that all made up? He asked with a shake of his head. It's not mentioned in any of our textbooks. 'Cause it's the kinda shameful history that people wanna ignore, Izuku. Fowler explained further. Besides, when a person gains great power, they like to show it off to everyone they can. And that includes All for One. How does this all tie together, though? And what about One for All? Toshinori answered Izuku's queries with a very solemn visage. I said that All for One could give quirks to others, remember? He made people trust him or submit to his will by altering their abilities. His head fell as his voice took on a more uncomfortable tone. But apparently, there were many poor souls who couldn't bear the burden of the quirks they received. They became like mindless living dolls, incapable of speaking, just like the Nomus. A gasp escaped Izuku's throat, only for All Might to lift his head back up. Meanwhile, some quirks actually evolved as they passed on. Some even combined with other power sets. This evil man had a quirkless younger brother. He was small and sickly, but he had a strong sense of justice. They couldn't have been more different. It pained the brother to see All for One's deeds, so he kept resisting him. But then, All for One transferred a quirk to his sibling, one that would allow him to stockpile power. We don't know if it was a gift he was giving his brother or if he just wanted to force him to submit. Don't tell me, Izuku uttered. Yes, even though everyone thought he was quirkless, turns out the brother did have a quirk. All Might affirmed, though even he didn't realize this to be the case. He had a useless power that only allowed him to pass down quirks. Spreading his arms out, Toshinori declared, so, the stockpiling ability merged with the brother's power, and that is how One for All came to be. After a long pause to let the revelation settle with his pupil, Toshinori brought his arms back down and sighed. I always found it ironic, that justice so often spawns from evil. But Izuku stood straight up out of his seat, left with even more questions. Wait, hold on, I understand how One for All came about now, but, this bad guy must be long dead at this point. So why are you bringing him up now? Standing up himself, Toshinori went over and placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. One who steals quirks has no limits. Anything's possible. There are quirks that halt aging, after all. He probably has something like that, or maybe even multiple. He brought his hands behind his back and turned around, craning his head down toward the floor. The symbol of evil seemed pretty much immortal, with the state of the world at the time and their huge difference in combat abilities. The younger brother decided to trust this new quirk to future generations. Even though he couldn't defeat All for One, he hoped that One for All could continue to grow in power, until it was strong enough to stop his older brother. And then it was your turn, right? Izuku asked. Yes, and I managed to defeat All for One, at least, that's what I thought. Toshinori lifted up his shirt, showing off his scar. That's how I really got this wound. The toxic chainsaw story was completely made up so that people wouldn't know what really happened. His grip tightened around the hem of his shirt as he brought it back down. But even then, All for One somehow seems to have survived, and is now the brain behind the League of Villains. Which surprises the hell out of me. Fowler exclaimed, standing up as well. Considering that you literally blew half of his head off. Hearing that made Izuku's jaw drop. Whoa, hold on, what? All Might, you did that. With a curt nod, the number one hero confirmed it. Yes. I've only taken 2 lives in my hero career, young Midoriya. The first was All for One, he glanced over to Optimus briefly. And the second was Dropkick. I somewhat regret the latter, but certainly not the former. But again, he's somehow back in action now, so I guess it was all for naught. Moving toward a nearby window, All Might gazed out over the afternoon sky, breathing a shaky sigh. So, now you know. The entire purpose of One for All is to defeat All for One. And one day, you might have to fight against him. I know it's a lot to take in, but I'll do it, Izuku proclaimed, taking everyone in the room off guard. With a clenched fist, he approached All Might from behind, his expression resolute. All Might, I'll do whatever it takes, no matter how impossible it may be. Izuku, your statement is a brave one, but please, think this over. Optimus encouraged, reaching down to place his hand on the boy's back. Your progress with One for All has been exceedingly well, to be sure, but you are far from ready to face such an immortal threat. But the Quirk inheritor wasn't deterred, facing the Prime with his unwavering resolve. I know, Optimus, believe me, I do. But after hearing all of this, it's just made me all the more determined to master One for All. To do more training. If I have to face this All for One someday, then I want to be as ready as I can. He directed his focus back to All Might, who hadn't moved a muscle. Besides, we all know that All Might doesn't have a long time left as a hero. So I want to make sure that I learn everything that I can from him, you, and everyone else. He wore a smile as he approached the number 1 hero. As long as you and Optimus are with me, All Might, I feel like I can do anything. So please, continue to train me, and we'll make sure that All for One is defeated for good this time. Right. Silence. Toshinori made no move to say anything after Izuku's self-assured speech. Instead, his features were etched with sadness, concern, perhaps a combination of both. Izuku couldn't fully tell, but it was obvious that his mentor seemed distressed about something. All Might. Come on, All Might. You need to tell the kid. Toshinori mentally kicked himself, knowing that there was still something crucial that he was keeping from his protege. He deserves to know. He should know, but, right when he was about to open his mouth to speak, though. Ring ring asterisk ring ring. The duo gasped and Izuku looked down to his pocket, taking out his cell phone. His eyebrows shot up when he saw the caller ID. Kyoka. Sorry, I've gotta take this. No, go ahead, I understand. Toshinori encouraged, though not before giving Izuku a pat on the shoulder. And young Midoriya, thank you. After Izuku gave him another smile and a nod, he went off to answer the call, leaving Toshinori to sag his shoulders in shame. He couldn't go through with it. And Optimus could tell. There is something else that you are keeping from him, All Might, he said quietly so that Izuku couldn't hear. What is going on? I think I know. Gran Torino deduced, strolling up next to his old pupil. His words are still on your mind after all these years, aren't they? The ones of your old sidekicks. Fowler pursed his lips, knowing exactly what Torino was speaking of. Sir Night Eye's vision of the future, the one he said where you would die at the hands of an unspeakable evil. Stop. Toshinori whipped around, silencing Fowler before he could go on. Young Midoriya doesn't need to know about that, not right now. His eyes shifted back toward his student sadly. I don't want to break his spirit, now when he's gained so much of it. What is this prediction you speak of, All Might? Optimus questioned, kneeling down before the 3 men. And who is, Sir Night Eye? It's a very long story, Optimus. Toshinori ran a hand through his hair. Let's just say that Night Eye is someone who I don't speak with often anymore, not after. But before the hero could elaborate further, Izuku suddenly screamed at the top of his lungs, rushing over to them in a panic. Optimus. The quartet set their sights on the boy, who was quite visibly worried as he raised his phone up to the Autobot commander. It's Kyoka and Yaoyorozu. They're in trouble. The Prime's attention was immediately brought to the phone, taken aback by the news. What? Let me speak to them, please. Wasting no time, Izuku put his cell phone on speaker and said, okay, you're on. Optimus, are you there? Kyoka's voice came hastily from the other end. I am, Kyoka. Optimus drew his head closer, making sure they could hear him. What's going on? Are you and Momo alright? We are, but things aren't too good here. We're with Snake Eyes and Edgeshot, but we're stranded in the forest around MT. Fuji. Momo piped up next. We're being hunted by an unknown Decepticon and his torpedo mini-cons. We managed to fend off the mini-cons, but we have a feeling their master won't be far behind if they went back to him. Fowler smacked his forehead in frustration. Torpedo mini-cons. Is there anything you bots don't transform into? Torpedo mini-cons, Optimus reiterated, thinking of who the Decepticon in question might be. Kyoka, were you able to ascertain any physical characteristics of the enemy? Not much, Kyoka admitted. Only that he's got a large crest on his head and one big claw hand. Plus, his voice is pretty creepy. As much as Prime didn't want to concede, that wasn't much to go off of. Still, whoever their enemy was, they needed to get to the mountain and rescue their comrades. That much, he did know. Alright, I want the four of you to stay where you are and remain calm. We will be there as soon as we. Kra Chum. Ah. Without warning, a loud noise followed by the girls screaming put the five on high alert. Kyoka. Kyoka. Izuku cried out. What is happening? Optimus called through the phone. They could hear the sound of rapid footfalls, meaning that the girls were likely running for their lives. But even so, Kyoka managed to answer before their call cut out. It's a shark. A goddamn flying shar, zeeked. Optimus' optics widened in horror at what that meant. A flying shark, oh no. Standing up and reaching for his helm, the Prime activated his comlink and contacted the base immediately. Red alert, this is Optimus, we have a situation. Open a ground bridge at my location and prepare a team to go to MT. Fuji. Kyoka and Momo are in danger, I repeat, the girls are in danger. Izuku's worry was ever growing the more he heard the desperation in Optimus' voice. Optimus, what's going on? Kyoka and Momo are dealing with a considerably dangerous Predacon, Izuku. Optimus explained, directing his gaze down to the boy and All Might. And it is imperative that we reach them before he destroys them all. I think it'd be best if the two of you go to MT. Fuji ahead of me and help as much as you can. Furrowing his brow, the number one hero nodded in agreement. Of course, Optimus, consider it done. Buffing up once again into his muscle form, All Might set his eyes down to his pupil, offering a hand. Young Midoriya, it'd be best if you hitch a ride with me. We'll be at MT. Fuji in less than 5 minutes. Reaching out, Izuku grasped his mentor's hand in solidarity. Right, I'm with you, All Might. Let's go save them. But just hop on my back this time, okay? All Might pointed sternly down to the student. And no weird faces this time. Please. The reminder couldn't help but make Izuku wince, the memory of his first encounter with All Might making him feel slightly uncomfortable. Why yeah, of course. For good measure, he made sure to put his helmet on. No problem. With that, All Might raised the garage door back up and he and Izuku blasted off into the sky with a single leap, leaving Optimus, Fowler and Gran Torino behind. Just then, the ground bridge opened directly next to the Autobot leader, prompting him to peer down at the two men. Agent Fowler, I believe it would be best for you and Gran Torino to return to the hospital until further notice. This con really that big a deal, Prime? Fowler questioned with folded arms over his chest. He is a very serious threat, I assure you. Prime asserted as he stepped closer to the portal. He is one of the Decepticons' most intelligent tacticians, as well as one of Megatron's closest and most loyal allies. Back at MT. Fuji, things weren't going all that well for the four humans, who were currently sprinting for their lives from a giant metal shark that was somehow swimming underground. That's it. Kyoka shouted between breaths. I am done trying to figure out Transformers. They can turn into pretty much anything for all we know. Wouldn't surprise me. Edgeshot concurred as he and Snake Eyes tried everything in their power to try and slow the beast down. Snake Eyes threw caltrops and smoke bombs in the Predacon's face while Edgeshot sliced down massive trees with his body to try and stop it, but the malevolent metal fish seemed hellbent on continuing his pursuit, crashing through everything head-on. He even used his mini-cons to his advantage, using them as extra propulsion. This thing is unstoppable. Very nearly. Momo suddenly stumbled, tripping over a tree root and crashing directly on her knee. Kyoka gasped and went to turn back. No, Momo. Before she could, though, Snake Eyes leapt in and grabbed hold of her just as the giant shark came bursting out to the dirt, throwing them and Momo away to opposite sides of the forest path. As they tumbled into the grass, Kyoka struggled against her mentor, intent on saving her friend. Gah, Snake Eyes. Let me go. I've gotta get to her. Mwahaha. However, Kyoka stopped thrashing as a massive shadow loomed over her and Snake Eyes, bringing their sights up to the massive, flying shark. His head was a bright cyan color while the rest of him was a darker blue, with several sections of his body having exposed mechanical bits all throughout. His lower jaw and dorsal fin was silver while his underbelly and the fins on his tail were bright yellow. His blood-red optics glared down at them, a sinister grin forming along its jaw as he made a statement in the format of a haiku. Pathetic human beings, cower before me. Sky bite, terrorize. A massive bellow came from his throat as the self-proclaimed Sky Bite transformed, his jaw splitting in half as it and his underbelly extended out, forming his legs and feet. His entire back split down the middle and folded in on themselves, the panels propping up on the robot mode back instead. Meanwhile, the entire rear of the shark separated into two chunks, with the main tail part becoming one clawed arm while the portion behind the dorsal fin transformed into the other arm, a pair of mounted guns popping out for good measure. The shark's nose flipped inward, exposing a purple spark crystal with the Predacon symbol on it as it shifted up to form the robot chest. Finally, the dorsal fin revealed itself to be attached to Sky Bite's head, which rotated 90 degrees to reveal his permanently grimacing visage to them all. Kyoka gasped and crawled backwards on her hands, putting more distance between her and the Predacon. Snake Eyes did the same, though he quickly drew his sword in self-defense. "Stay back." Kyoka aimed her wrist-mounted speakers at Sky Bite, ready to plug her jacks in. "I'm warning you. I'm friends with the Autobots, ya giant fish stick. HM. Oh, I know that already." Sky Bite brushed off with a sinister chortle. "I overheard your conversation before I decided to drop in." Using his claw hand, the Predacon scratched his chin with intrigue. "So, Optimus Prime himself is on this planet, EH. How interesting. I wonder if Lord Megatron knows about this yet or if Starscream's withheld that information." But he shook his head, getting back to the more important matter before him. "Ah, something to ponder later. For now, you insolent fleshbags must be dealt with." Seeing something out the corner of her eye, Kyoka briefly glanced down and, to her relief, saw Edgeshot moving in silently to help Momo get away, the Fold A body quirk user whisking her off quickly. Listen, man," Kyoka brought her sights back up, raising her hands to try and appeal to Sky Bite. "If you're upset that we hurt your little guys." "HA. No, of course not." Sky Bite stomped his foot angrily. "My mini-cons knew what they were getting into, and they failed. So now, it's up to ME to bring the lot of you down. PFF'd, which should be easy, honestly." He craned his head around toward his back, where his minions were still attached. "I mean, seriously, how did you two have trouble with such teeny tiny, BWWWAAOOOMMM*, gah." Within 2 seconds of getting hit, Sky Bite stumbled away, his hands flying up to his audio receptors in pain. All the while, Kyoka smirked with satisfaction. "I think you get the point now, don't ya?" "What?" Using his claw, Sky Bite rummaged around the sides of his head, making sure his audio receptors were still functional. Thankfully, they were, though an annoying, high-pitched ringing persisted after the attack. "Grr, why you will pay dearly for that." Aiming his forearm guns at the duo, Sky Bite let loose a volley of laser fire upon them, forcing Kyoka and Snake Eyes to scatter. Leaping behind a rock, Kyoka breathed hard, trying to keep her cool as her mentor managed to outrun the blasts. Ha, this is not what I had in mind when I was hoping these internships would be exciting." "I know, right? Kyoka gasped and whirled around, somehow having missed Momo and Edgeshot behind the rock with her. The ninja hero was currently wrapping a bandage around Momo's leg, no doubt one that she created herself. Crawling closer, Kyoka put a hand on her friend's shoulder. "Are you okay?" Momo sighed and looked down to her knee. "I will be. Thankfully not broken, but it is slightly sprained." Kyoka pursed her lips and gave a reassuring squeeze to Momo's shoulder. "Don't worry. We'll get back to base soon and we can have Marissa take a look at you." "Hopefully," Edgeshot said with uncertainty. "With any luck, Optimus is moving fast with this." Giving him a confident nod, Kyoka replied, "He's gotta be. He and Izuku aren't gonna waste any time." Out the corner of her eye, Kyoka caught something moving at high speeds through the sky, bringing her head up and squinting to try and make it out. "Wait, what the, oh boy." Her mouth curled into a joyous grin as the figure began to descend, prompting Momo and Edgeshot to turn their heads up as well. "Yeah, I think we'll be good. THOOM. With a landing that shook the ground around them, All Might slammed down into a crouch, allowing Izuku to leap off his back and immediately rush over to the group. "We are here, ready to lend a hand." The One for All user proclaimed with his signature grin. "Kyoka, Yaoyorozu." Izuku slid next to his friends, spotting Momo's injury before removing his helmet. "Oh no, what happened?" Momo sent the green at a soft, reassuring smile, raising her hand to him. It's okay, Midoriya. I wasn't hurt by the Decepticon. I just fell and tore my knee up a little, and sprained it. A sigh escaped Izuku's throat. Oh, thank goodness. I'm glad to hear that. He then directed his focus over to Kyoka, giving her an awkward grin. Hey, long time, no see. Hey, very funny, green bean. Kyoka rolled her eyes, lightly jabbing Izuku in the shoulder with her fist. But let's save the humor for when we're not in this crappy situation. She peeked past the boulder they were hiding behind, which prompted Izuku and the others to do the same. Snake Eyes was still successfully keeping Skybite's attention on him, but the second that the Predacon transformed back into his shark mode, she knew he wouldn't be able to keep it up forever. We've gotta help Snake Eyes. He's good, but I don't know how long he can hold Skybite off. Message received, All Might stated, standing tall with his hands firmly on his hips. Just leave things to me. You kids wait here for the ground bridge. I'll deal with the Decepticon. One mighty leap later and All Might was in the fray, making it to the massive, metal shark in a single bound. Surprise! Utah, smash! The number one hero delivered a massive uppercut to Skybite's chin, forcing him to change back into robot mode as he clattered into a bunch of trees. Landing on his feet, All Might dusted off his hands, all while Snake Eyes approached from behind him. So, you must be the infamous Snake Eyes. All Might extended his hand. A pleasure to finally meet you. Snake Eyes reciprocated the gesture, but it wasn't long until Skybite came bursting out from under the logs, growling in frustration. Gura, what is this planet? Are all humans this persistent? All Might threw his head back and laughed. Ha ha ha. Oh, trust me, my deceptive visitor, you'll find that many of us heroes are very persistent. Heroes? What are you? A gasp escaped the Predacon as his head snapped around, staring off into the distance. Not too far away, he saw a craggy stone outcropping near the volcano, and something was shimmering on the side of it. That's it, he thought before glowering back down at the humans. I don't have time for this. Skybite jumped out of the log pile to start running on foot. I need to resume my search. Farewell, fools. *WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT*. Transforming back into shark mode, Skybite flew straight into the air, heading directly to the outcropping. Oh, no you don't. All Might pumped his legs and went after the Predacon, shouting down to Snake Eyes, take care of the children. Optimus should be bridging here very soon. Giving a thumbs up, Snake Eyes went straight for the boulder that his comrades were hiding behind, finding Edgeshot and Izuku already aiding Momo up to her feet. Okay, slowly. Take it easy, don't put too much pressure on it. Edgeshot encouraged, with Momo giving him an apprehensive nod. Kyoka went over to her mentor, bowing to him with a small grin. I'm glad to see you safe, master. Nice work. Snake Eyes returned the bow before nudging his head toward Momo, which Kyoka reassured him on. Don't worry, she'll be okay. We've just gotta hope that. Choom. I am so glad that they're fast with that thing. Everyone spun their heads toward the ground bridge portal as it opened up on the forest path, where Optimus, Jazz, Windblade, Bumblebee and Bulkhead all came charging out. Guys. Kyoka waved them down, the Autobots wasting no time getting over to them. Great hustle. Well, what did ya expect? Bulkhead slammed his fist into his palm. We aren't about to let ya become fish food. But Windblade let out a gasp, approaching the humans and kneeling down to check on her partner. Momo. Oh, Primus, you're hurt. What happened? Did Skybite do this to you? No, Windblade, I'm fine, really. Momo insisted. I just tripped up and I hit my knee pretty bad. I'll be okay. Well, that's good to hear. Jazz said, though he was still quite serious as he asked them, now, where's Skybite? Izuku pointed off toward the outcroppings in the distance. All Might's following him to the mountain. He mentioned that he was searching for something, but we don't know what. Optimus narrowed his optics at the mountain, intent on following them. I see. Well, whatever it is he's looking for, we cannot allow him to find it. He craned his head down to his scout. Bumblebee, aid Izuku and the others in getting back to base. We will follow Skybite. B gave a dutiful salute and transformed into his beetle mode, allowing Izuku an edge shot to help Momo into the back while Snake Eyes and Kyoka took the front seats. Once all doors were closed, Bumblebee zoomed off into the portal, allowing it to close as Prime pointed toward the mountain. Autobots, roll out. Meanwhile, Skybite had made it to his destination, his jetting around the outcropping as he scanned for what he saw before. Come on, I know I saw it. But it didn't take him long to locate the shimmering object, his optics widening with excitement. Haha, yes, terrorize. Bellowing out a roar, Skybite changed back into his robot mode, aiming his arm guns at the massive rock. I'll have you in just a moment. Stop right there. Letting out a gasp, Skybite rounded about to see All Might come sailing directly at him, the hero pulling a fist back for a heavy strike. You won't be getting anything today, Decepticon Cur. Texas, SMAAAASH. Thrusting his fist forward, All Might let loose a burst of powerful wind that threatened to crash into Skybite, but the Predacons Minicons jetted him straight upward, which instead meant the wind struck the outcropping and blew a large chunk of it into pieces. And this included what Skybite was looking for. Not one, but two Minicon panels fell down toward the earth below, prompting both the Predacon and All Might to make a beeline for them. Haha, you fool. Skybite taunted. You've handed them to me on a platter. No. All Might hollered, propelling himself forward with a pump of his arms. Thankfully, this made him fast enough to intercept one of the panels. The second was quickly grabbed by Skybite's claw hand and he stored it in his chest compartment immediately, before the con thrust his normal hand forward to take the other from All Might. The two struggled against one another for it, but it was obvious that All Might had the stronger pull. Grah. Let go. Skybite insisted. Not in a million years. I have the time, human. I must have this, pow pow pow, og. Letting out a yelp, Skybite was forced to let go when a laser blast grazed his hand, making him pull back in pain. Down below, the Autobots had arrived on the scene, all of them aiming their weapons at the shark bot. Bulkhead's cannons were glowing intensely, having been the one who fired first. Back off, Pred. That's our pal you're messin' with. The green Autobot warned. Optimus came forward, lowering his rifle while defiantly swiping his arm at the enemy. Skybite, stand down. Astonishingly, Skybite did so, allowing All Might to return to the Autobots with the Minicon panel in tow. All the same, however, the Predacon sent a grimacing grin down to the Autobot commander. Well, if it isn't the one and only Optimus Prime. It's been eons, hasn't it? He once again set his hand to his chin, leaning forward in intrigue. And here many of us thought you were offline. I suppose Megatron was right, though, never assume the favorable outcome unless you see it with your own optics. Prime furrowed his irises back at him. I could say the same about you, Skybite. Last we saw you, one of our best led you straight into a supernova, and sacrificed himself in the process. PFF'd. Please, you think a simple trick like that could get rid of me? Never. Skybite rebuked, holding his head up high. HMPH, that Autobot was a fool to think he could do me in such a manner. Shut your yap about him, con scum. Jazz snapped. He was a close friend of all of us. Windblade added, clearly upset about the subject. He went out like a hero and it's a disgrace to his legacy that you survived and not him. Skybite began coughing at that, a nervous tone heard in his voice. Ahem, well, it matters not. I've gotten what I came for. He flashed his obtained Minicon panel at the group, nudging his chin down to All Might. You can keep that other one. A single Minicon is all I need. It'll make an excellent bargaining chip to integrate myself into the Decepticon crew. No. *WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT*. Windblade transformed in a flash and flew straight at Skybite, intent on stopping him. I won't let you. But the shark bot simply huffed at the attempt, producing a large, black sphere from behind his back. Apologies, but this is farewell. Fortunately, one always comes prepared with an escape plan. Before Optimus could shout a warning to Windblade, Skybite threw the sphere down and it collided with her, producing a burst of light and smoke that blinded everyone in the area temporarily. Adieu. Until we meet again, Autodolts. Ha ha ha. By the time everyone's vision cleared, Skybite was nowhere to be seen, and Windblade had nosedived right into a mound of dirt. Shifting back into robot mode, the city speaker clenched her metal teeth in frustration, punching the ground in front of her. Gah, damn it all. She stood up as the others regrouped with her, bowing her head to her leader. I'm sorry, Prime, I couldn't reach him in time. And I must apologize as well. All Might frowned while presenting the panel to Optimus. I was only able to retrieve the one. Sorry, Optimus. It is all right, my friend. Optimus assured, plucking the tablet up with his fingers. While the outcome is unfortunate, we should be grateful that we were able to save this one. His gaze was directed back toward the sky, scowling to where their Predacon adversary once was. Still, there is much that we need to be concerned about. If Skybite intends on joining Starscream's crew, then the conflict on Earth is about to become much more problematic. Reaching up to his comlink, the Prime contacted the base once more. Red alert, bridge us back. We have much to discuss with the team. And it's the end of Season 2 Part 28 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.